My name is Morgan Thompson, 35 years old, living what I thought was the perfect life with my husband Richard. 8 years of marriage, a tech empire I built from nothing, and a fortune worth over $100 million. Then one Thursday afternoon, I accidentally found his laptop open. The screen displayed emails to divorce attorneys, financial calculations of my assets, and a plan to leave me after our company merger. My stomach dropped as I realized the man I loved was plotting to take everything I worked for. If you want to know how I turned his scheme against him, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, hit subscribe, and stay with me for the most satisfying revenge you'll ever hear. Looking back, it's almost embarrassing how blind I was to what was happening in my own marriage. I truly believed I had it all: the success, the loving husband, the dream home. I want to start by telling you about how I built my company from scratch, because understanding what I created is key to grasping what Richard tried to steal. I launched my tech security company, SecureSync, when I was 26, working out of a tiny apartment in San Francisco. Those early days were brutal: 18-hour workdays, instant ramen for breakfast and dinner, and the constant fear of failure. But I had identified a gap in the market for enterprise-level security solutions that didn't require massive infrastructure investments. My algorithm allowed smaller companies to access the kind of protection previously only available to corporations with deep pockets. The first 2 years, I barely kept the lights on. My third year, we landed our first major client. By year 5, we had 40 employees and a real office in the financial district. Now, 10 years later, SecureSync employs over 200 people and is valued at just over $100 million. I met Richard at a charity gala benefiting tech education for underprivileged kids. He was tall, charming, and seemed genuinely interested in my work rather than just my growing bank account. As an investment banker, he understood the financial world in ways I didn't, which I found complementary to my technical skills. We married after 11 months of dating. Richard made good money, around $300,000 a year, but it was a fraction of what my company was generating. I never cared about the disparity. Money wasn't why I loved him. I trusted him completely, adding his name to most of my accounts, bringing him in as a consultant on financial decisions for the company, involving him in every aspect of my life and business. We lived in a stunning modern home in Malibu with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Pacific. We took luxury vacations to destinations most people only dream about. We drove expensive cars and wore designer clothes. I worked incredibly hard, but I believed we were building this beautiful life together. We decided not to have children early in our marriage. We both claimed to be focused on our careers, though looking back, Richard was suspiciously adamant about remaining childless. Now I wonder if he always knew our marriage had an expiration date. There were red flags, of course. There always are in hindsight. Richard's spending habits became increasingly extravagant over time. He needed the newest Porsche, the most expensive watch, the finest suits. I was making more than enough to support this lifestyle, so I never questioned it. He also subtly controlled aspects of my life: comments about my weight if I skipped the gym, remarks about my outfits before business meetings, suggestions about which employees I should promote or fire. About a year ago, SecureSync developed a breakthrough in quantum encryption that sent our valuation soaring. We were suddenly in talks with major tech conglomerates about a potential merger that would likely double or triple our worth. Richard appeared supportive, excited even. But now I understand he was just calculating his potential payout. Around this time, my best friend Heather began expressing concerns. "Morgan, does Richard seem different to you lately? He's checking his phone constantly when we're all together. And last week when I stopped by, he was really jumpy about his laptop." I dismissed her worries. "He's just stressed about work. The market's been volatile." "I don't know," Heather persisted. "Something feels off. You're about to close the biggest deal of your career, and he seems more distant than ever. That's not normal. But I had complete faith in my husband. I believed we were partners in every sense of the word. I thought we were just going through a phase. That once the merger talks settled down, we'd reconnect. I never imagined he was strategically planning his exit to maximize how much of my hard-earned money he could take. The night before I discovered his plan, we had dinner at our favorite restaurant overlooking the ocean. He toasted to our future and talked about traveling more once the merger was complete. He looked me directly in the eyes as he laid out these plans for our future together, all while knowing he intended to leave me as soon as my company valuation peaked. That's what hurt the most in the beginning, not just the betrayal, but the performance. Every kiss, every "I love you," every conversation about our future together had been part of an elaborate act designed to keep me complacent until the optimal moment for him to file for divorce. The day everything changed started like any other. Richard had left for work, and I was taking a rare morning at home to catch up on some reading before afternoon meetings. I noticed he had forgotten his laptop, which was unusual since he was almost obsessively attached to it lately. The device was in sleep mode on his desk in our home office. I needed to email myself some photos from our recent anniversary trip that I knew were on his computer. We'd always had an open device policy in our marriage, no passwords between us, no secrets. At least, that's what I thought. When I opened his laptop, it woke from sleep mode directly to his email. The message displayed was from someone named Gregory Wilkins with the subject line re: Divorce strategy, asset division approach. My fingers froze over the keyboard. For a moment, I told myself there must be some explanation. Maybe it was for a friend? Perhaps it was related to a client? But as my eyes scanned the email, my heart began pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Richard, as discussed. Waiting until after the SecureSync merger is completed is the optimal strategy. California's community property laws will entitle you to half of any increase in the company's value during the marriage. Based on projected valuation post-merger, we're looking at a potential claim of $45 to $60 million. I've attached the detailed financial strategy we discussed. My hands were shaking as I clicked on the attachment. It was a comprehensive document titled Thompson Divorce Strategy, with a detailed timeline, financial projections, and legal approaches. The document specifically mentioned waiting until peak valuation post-merger before filing. I scrolled through Richard's emails, finding dozens of exchanges with this attorney dating back 6 months. There were also emails with a financial analyst discussing the best ways to track and eventually claim my assets. He had spreadsheets detailing every aspect of my company's worth, our personal property, investment accounts, and even items of sentimental value with estimated prices attached. The deepest cut came when I discovered emails between Richard and his assistant, Amanda. I had always thought she was professional and efficient. I had even defended her when Heather once commented that Amanda seemed too attentive to my husband. Got the reservation for next weekend. Morgan thinks I'm at the Chicago conference. 2 days at the beachfront suite you loved last time. Amanda's reply, can't wait. Soon we won't have to hide anymore. Just think, this time next year, we could be in our own place, with plenty of her money to enjoy. Richard responded, the waiting is killing me, but trust me, it'll be worth it. $50 million is worth being patient for. I've worked too hard setting this up to rush it now. I felt physically ill. The room seemed to spin around me as 8 years of memories suddenly reshuffled themselves in my mind, taking on sinister new meanings. All those late nights at the office, business trips that ran long, his insistence that I was too busy to accompany him to certain events. I took photos of everything using my phone, forwarded key emails to my personal account, and then carefully returned the laptop exactly as I had found it. Then I went to our bathroom and vomited until there was nothing left. That night when Richard came home, I performed the hardest role of my life. I smiled, asked about his day, and pretended everything was normal while inside I was screaming. He didn't notice anything different, which only confirmed how skilled he'd become at deception. We sat across from each other at dinner, him talking about some work issue while I nodded along, wondering if I had ever really known him at all. After he fell asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, tears silently streaming down my face. I felt like such a fool. All those years I thought we were building something together. He had been calculating how much he could take from me. The next morning, I called Heather. "You were right," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "He's planning to divorce me after the merger. He's been planning it for months." "Oh my God, Morgan. I'm coming over right now." "No," I said. "He can't know that I know." "Not yet." "What are you going to do?" Heather asked. "I don't know yet, but I'm not going to let him take everything I've worked for." Heather immediately shifted into protection mode. "Don't confront him until you have a plan. Document everything, and get the best damn lawyer in California." That afternoon, I began methodically documenting everything I had found. I created a secure cloud folder with screenshots, forwarded emails, photos of his planning documents, and a detailed timeline of his affair based on the evidence I had discovered. Each night, I continued the charade at home while my mind raced with fear, betrayal, and increasingly, determination. I would catch Richard looking at me sometimes with what I now recognized as calculation rather than affection. He was just waiting for the right moment to strike. But now, so was I. The morning after my discovery, I called Stephanie Grant, reportedly the most formidable divorce attorney in Los Angeles. Her firm was known for representing high-net-worth clients, particularly women in the entertainment and business worlds. I used my secondary phone to make the call and scheduled the appointment during a time Richard thought I would be in meetings at my company. Stephanie's office was in a discreet building in Century City with a private entrance. The walls were lined with modern art, and her desk was impeccably organized. She listened without interruption as I laid out everything I had discovered. "Unfortunately, this is not uncommon," she said when I finished. "The timing of divorce to maximize financial gain is something I see regularly, especially with self-made women entrepreneurs." "What can I do?" I asked. "He's planning to take half of everything I built." Stephanie leaned forward. "California is a community property state, which means assets acquired during marriage are generally split 50-50, regardless of who earned them. Your company's growth during your marriage could be considered community property." My stomach sank. "However," she continued, "there are legitimate ways to protect your assets if we act quickly and carefully. The key word is legitimate. We need to ensure everything we do can withstand court scrutiny. Nothing that could be viewed as hiding assets or fraudulent transfer." "I understand," I said. "I don't want to do anything illegal. I just want to protect what's rightfully mine. First, we need a comprehensive financial strategy. I'm going to refer you to Marcus Reynolds. He specializes in asset protection for high-net-worth individuals. Between his financial expertise and my legal guidance, we can develop a plan." 2 days later, I met with Marcus in a private conference room at Stephanie's office. He was a former hedge fund manager who now exclusively consulted on complex financial restructuring. "Based on what Stephanie has shared, we need to move quickly but cautiously," Marcus explained. "We'll focus on legitimate business restructuring and asset protection strategies that serve valid business purposes beyond just your divorce." Over the next several hours, we developed a multifaceted approach. First, we would create a series of legitimate business entities that would own various aspects of my intellectual property and business operations. These entities would have complex ownership structures that, while completely legal, would make it difficult to assign simple community property values. Second, we would accelerate some pending business transactions that made sense for the company anyway, moving cash into new operating entities for expansion projects we had already been planning. Third, We would use existing prenuptial agreement clauses regarding intellectual property that Richard had carelessly signed years earlier, never expecting my patents to become so valuable. What about our home and personal possessions? I asked. Those are trickier, Stephanie admitted. But we can establish trusts for certain items, especially those with significant personal or family history for you. We'll document everything meticulously to show legitimate purposes. How long will all this take? I asked. If we move efficiently, about a week, Marcus said. But you'll need to maintain absolute normalcy at home. One slip that makes him suspicious, and he could accelerate his timeline. That night, Richard mentioned he had a 3-day business trip coming up the following week. It was the opportunity we needed. The timing is perfect, Stephanie said when I called her. We can execute the most visible parts of the plan while he's away. For the next few days, I lived a double life. At home, I was the same loving wife Richard expected. At work, I was secretly preparing for the most important financial maneuvers of my life. I had to bring my CFO, Patricia, partially into my confidence. I didn't reveal the truth about Richard's plans, but I explained that I needed to restructure certain aspects of the company before the merger negotiations advanced. Is everything okay, Morgan? She asked, clearly sensing something was off. Just being prudent, I replied. These merger talks have made me realize we need better protection for our core intellectual property. Patricia had been with me since the early days. She nodded slowly. I trust your judgment. Tell me what you need. Over the next few days, I worked late into the night, reviewing documents, signing papers, and consulting privately with Stephanie and Marcus. Richard grew suspicious of my extra hours. The merger preparations are intense, I explained, hating how easily the lies now came to me. We're restructuring some aspects of our patent holdings before the final valuation. He seemed to accept this, even looking pleased. Now I understood why. He thought a higher company valuation would mean more money for him later. The emotional toll was immense. Each night, I lay beside a man who was plotting to take everything from me, pretending I didn't know, while my mind raced with legal strategies and asset protection plans. I barely slept. I lost 7 pounds in 5 days. I applied extra makeup to hide the dark circles under my eyes. Richard left for his business trip on Tuesday morning. I knew he was meeting Amanda at a resort in Santa Barbara. I had seen the confirmation email. The moment his car pulled away from our house, I began executing our plan. First, I called an emergency board meeting where I presented the restructuring plan as a strategic move to protect our intellectual property ahead of the merger. The board unanimously approved. Impressed by the detailed presentation Marcus had helped me prepare. Then I began moving personal valuables. I sent family heirlooms to a secure storage facility under a trust we had quickly established. I transferred ownership of my pre-marriage property to separate entities. Everything was documented meticulously with clear business purposes and backdated paperwork showing these plans had been in consideration for months. On Thursday morning, I got a text from Richard saying he was coming home early that night instead of Friday. I nearly panicked, but Stephanie calmed me down. We're ahead of schedule. The most critical transfers are complete. Just act normal. When Richard walked through the door Thursday evening, the major elements of our plan were in place. I greeted him with a kiss on the cheek, asked about his conference, and served the dinner I had carefully prepared. You seem different, he said, studying me across the table. More relaxed than you've been lately. I smiled. I think I'm finally getting excited about the merger rather than just stressed. It's going to change everything for us. Yes, he agreed, raising his wine glass. It certainly will. If he only knew how right he was. With Richard back home, executing the remaining aspects of our plan became exponentially more difficult. I had to be extremely careful about phone calls, emails, and meetings. Stephanie suggested we communicate primarily through a secure messaging app that left no traces on my devices. The most challenging part was maintaining my composure around Richard. Every time he touched me, every kiss goodbye, every casual I love you felt like a fresh betrayal. I found myself analyzing his every expression, wondering how he could so convincingly play the role of loving husband while planning to leave me penniless. Focus on the end goal. Heather reminded me during a brief phone call when Richard was in the shower. You just need to get through a few more days. The asset protection strategy Marcus had designed was complex but elegant. We created a series of legitimate business entities that would own various aspects of my intellectual property. Each transaction served a valid business purpose beyond just divorce protection, which was crucial for withstanding legal scrutiny later. For instance, we accelerated an international expansion we'd been planning anyway, which required establishing new corporate entities in several countries. These entities then purchased licenses to our core technology through completely legitimate business transactions. The result was moving significant value into structures that would be extremely difficult to categorize simply as community property. The key is documentation. Marcus emphasized during a lunch meeting while Richard was at his office. Every transaction needs a clear business justification that predates your knowledge of his divorce plans. Fortunately, I had been discussing many of these business moves with my executive team for months. We had emails, meeting minutes, and strategic planning documents showing these weren't hasty decisions made to thwart Richard's plans, but rather carefully considered business strategies. For our personal assets, we used different approaches. For the Malibu house, which was purchased during our marriage with my earnings, there wasn't much I could do directly. However, we discovered that the substantial improvements and renovations I had paid for using funds from my pre-marriage accounts could be partially protected through careful accounting. For artwork, jewelry, and other valuables, we created a personal trust with my niece as a beneficiary. This was completely legitimate as I had always been close to my brother's daughter and had mentioned providing for her education in various family conversations over the years. The most nerve-wracking moment came when Richard nearly caught me on the phone with Stephanie. I was in our home office discussing the final paperwork for transferring my pre-IPO shares to a new holding company when I heard his key in the front door, 2 hours earlier than expected. I quickly ended the call, closed the documents on my laptop, and switched to reviewing ordinary company emails just as he walked into the room. "You're home early," I said, hoping my voice sounded normal. "Meeting finished sooner than expected," he replied, studying me. "Everything okay? You look tense." "Just the usual merger stress," I said, forcing a smile. "How about a glass of wine on the deck?" That distraction worked, but I realized I needed to be even more careful. After that, I only conducted business related to our plan away from home or when I was absolutely certain Richard wouldn't return unexpectedly. By the end of the week, the major components of our asset protection strategy were in place. My most valuable intellectual property was now owned by a complex network of legitimate business entities. My personal assets were either protected in trusts or carefully documented as separate property. The company's cash reserves had been legitimately deployed for expansion projects and strategic acquisitions we'd been planning anyway. On Friday afternoon, I met with Stephanie and Marcus for a final review. "Everything is in order," Stephanie confirmed. "All transactions are complete, all paperwork filed. Most importantly, everything we've done serves legitimate business or personal purposes beyond divorce protection." "What about the timing?" I asked. "Won't it look suspicious that I did all this just before he filed for divorce?" "That's why documentation of prior intent is so crucial," Marcus explained. "We have records showing these moves were planned before you discovered his scheme. Plus, with the merger negotiations underway, this timing makes perfect business sense." "And legally?" I pressed. Stephanie smiled confidently. "Everything we've done is completely legal. Aggressive, yes, but legal. You haven't hidden assets or made fraudulent transfers. You've made legitimate business decisions that happen to also protect your interests." I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. So now what? Now we wait, Stephanie said. Based on the emails you found, he'll likely file shortly after the merger announcement next week. When he does, we'll be ready. That night, Richard suggested we go out to celebrate the upcoming merger announcement. We went to an exclusive restaurant overlooking the ocean, the same one where he had toasted our future just weeks earlier. As we clinked glasses, I wondered if he could see the change in my eyes. If he could tell that I was no longer the trusting wife he had so easily deceived. To us, he said, smiling that charming smile that had once made my heart race. And to new beginnings. To new beginnings, I repeated, thinking how differently those words meant to each of us. Little did he know that while he thought he was just days away from claiming half my fortune, I had already ensured he would walk away with far less than he had planned. The chess pieces were all in position. Now I just had to wait for him to make his move. The merger announcement came on Monday morning. Our company's stock jumped 15% before lunch. The business news channels were running constant segments about SecureSync's revolutionary encryption technology and how the merger would transform the cybersecurity landscape. My phone was flooding with congratulatory messages from friends, colleagues, and industry peers. Among the messages was one from Richard. So proud of you, babe. This calls for a special dinner tonight. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Instead, I simply replied, thanks. See you at home. I spent the day at the office, fielding calls from investors and handling press inquiries. Around 4 o'clock, Patricia knocked on my office door. Morgan, there's someone here to see you. A process server. My heart skipped a beat. So, it was happening even faster than we'd anticipated. Richard wasn't even waiting until the end of the week. Send them in, I said, straightening my posture. A young man in a suit entered, asked if I was Morgan Thompson, and handed me a large envelope. You've been served with divorce papers, he said mechanically before turning to leave. I sat alone in my office, staring at the sealed envelope. Even though I had been expecting this, the reality of it hit me hard. I called Stephanie. It's happening, I said. I just got served. Sooner than we expected, but we're ready, she assured me. Don't open the papers yet. Bring them directly to my office. 2 hours later, Stephanie and I reviewed Richard's divorce filing. It was exactly as we had feared. He was claiming half of everything, including my company shares, our home, all personal property, and even future earnings from my patents. His filing specifically mentioned the recent merger as evidence of the company's value. He's asking for $50 million in cash or equivalent assets, Stephanie noted, plus ongoing royalties from your technology patents. It's disgusting, I said, my hands shaking with anger. He contributed nothing to building my company. The good news, Stephanie said, is that our preparations have put us in a strong position. His attorney is clearly expecting to find assets that are no longer structured as simply community property. I returned home that evening to find Richard waiting with champagne. There you are, he said smoothly. I was getting worried. I placed the divorce papers on the coffee table between us. Were you worried I wouldn't receive these today? The change in his expression was subtle but unmistakable, a slight tightening around the eyes, a barely perceptible straightening of his posture. Then his face settled into a mask of rehearsed sadness. Morgan, I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I've been trying to find the right time to tell you that I'm unhappy. We've grown apart. And I think... Stop, I interrupted. Just stop. I know everything, Richard. The emails to your divorce attorney. The affair with Amanda. Your plan to wait until after the merger to maximize how much money you could take from me. He froze, calculation visible behind his eyes. Then he shifted strategies. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, I've consulted a divorce attorney because our marriage has problems, but these accusations... I saw the emails, Richard. All of them. Including the ones where you and Amanda discussed how you'd spend my money once the divorce was final. His facade cracked. You went through my private emails? That's illegal. I laughed bitterly. That's what concerns you. Not the fact that you were planning to steal half the company I built while sleeping with your assistant. Richard's expression hardened. It doesn't matter what you saw. California is a community property state. Half of everything we acquired during our marriage is legally mine, including your precious company. You might want to consult with your attorney again, I said calmly. Things have changed. What are you talking about? His voice had an edge now. Let's just say I've made some adjustments to our financial arrangements. Legitimate ones. The first flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. What did you do? Nothing illegal. Nothing fraudulent. Just some overdue business restructuring. The kind of thing any prudent CEO would do before a major merger. Richard grabbed his phone and stepped into the other room. I could hear him speaking urgently to someone, presumably his attorney. When he returned, his face was flushed with anger. This won't work, Morgan. Whatever you've done, my lawyers will undo it. You can't hide assets before a divorce. I didn't hide anything, I replied. Every transaction is fully documented and serves a legitimate business purpose. You're welcome to have your attorneys review everything, but I should warn you, they'll find the same thing mine did. Everything is legal. Over the next few days, Richard cycled through various strategies. First came anger and threats. I'll ruin you in court. I'll tell everyone how you manipulated company assets. Then came attempts at reconciliation. Morgan, we can work this out. We've both made mistakes. Let's put the lawyers aside and talk. Finally, when he realized his plans were falling apart, he tried financial negotiation. Be reasonable. I'm only asking for what's fair. $20 million and I'll go away quietly. His attorney must have been frantically searching for ways to access the assets Richard had counted on, only to discover that our restructuring had created significant legal barriers. Not insurmountable ones, perhaps, but obstacles that would require years of expensive litigation with uncertain outcomes. The most satisfying moment came about a week after he filed for divorce. I arrived home to find Richard and Amanda arguing in our living room. You promised me financial security, she was saying. Now you're telling me there's nothing. When they saw me, Amanda had the decency to look embarrassed. Richard just looked defeated. I should go, Amanda mumbled, grabbing her purse. Yes, you should, I agreed, holding the door open for her. After she left, Richard slumped onto the couch. She's leaving me. Says she didn't sign up for a broke guy with legal problems. I felt no sympathy. Interesting how quickly she lost interest when the prospect of my money disappeared. Morgan, he said, looking up at me, what do you want? Just tell me what it will take to end this amicably. I considered him for a moment, this man I had loved, who had betrayed me so completely. I want you to understand what you've lost. I said finally. Not the money, but the life we could have had if you'd actually loved me instead of my bank account. He had no answer for that. Despite the effectiveness of our asset protection strategy, Richard refused to accept a reasonable settlement. His attorney, Gregory Wilkins, was known for aggressive litigation tactics, and they decided to fight for every dollar they could get. They filed motions to invalidate your entire restructuring, Stephanie explained during a strategy session. They're claiming it was done specifically to defraud Richard of his community property rights. But we have documentation showing these plans were in development before I discovered his divorce scheme, I pointed out. Yes, and that's our strongest defense. The judge will see that these business decisions made perfect sense in the context of the merger, regardless of the divorce. The legal proceedings dragged on for months. Richard's team demanded extensive discovery, every email, every financial record, every corporate document. They deposed my executive team, my financial advisors, even Heather. They were looking for any evidence that our restructuring was motivated primarily by the divorce rather than legitimate business purposes. The stress was enormous. While trying to manage a newly merged company, I was spending countless hours with attorneys, reviewing documents, and preparing for court appearances. Some nights I slept only 3 or 4 hours before heading back to the office. The only thing keeping me going was determination not to let Richard win. For months into the proceedings, we had our first major court hearing. Richard's attorney argued passionately that I had deliberately transferred assets to defraud my husband of his rightful share. Your Honor, the timing is too convenient to be coincidental, Wilkins insisted. Just days before Mr. Thompson filed for divorce, Ms. Thompson engaged in a complex series of transactions that effectively removed millions of dollars from the marital estate. Stephanie was magnificent in response. She methodically presented documentation showing these business restructuring plans had been discussed for months. She had emails from before I discovered Richard's plot, board meeting minutes discussing the need to protect intellectual property ahead of the merger, and testimony from my executive team confirming these were long-planned business strategies. Furthermore, Your Honor, Stephanie concluded, every transaction served a legitimate business purpose independent of any divorce considerations. The international expansion, the intellectual property protection, the strategic acquisitions, all were sound business decisions that have already yielded positive results for the company. The judge, Eleanor Barnes, was a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 60s with decades of experience in complex divorce cases. She studied both attorneys thoughtfully before speaking. Mr. Wilkins, while the timing raises questions, Ms. Grant has provided substantial evidence that these business decisions were considered well before divorce proceedings began. Do you have any evidence that the primary purpose of these transactions was to deprive Mr. Thompson of community property rights rather than legitimate business interests? Wilkins hesitated. The circumstantial evidence is compelling, Your Honor. The sheer scale and timing. I didn't ask about circumstantial evidence, Counselor. I asked if you have direct evidence of intent to defraud. Not at this time, Your Honor, but with additional discovery. Judge Barnes cut him off. I'm denying your motion to invalidate these transactions at this time. The evidence suggests they served legitimate business purposes. However, she added, looking at me, I will allow continued discovery on this issue. If evidence emerges that the primary purpose was to deprive Mr. Thompson of community property rights, I will reconsider. It was a significant victory, but only the first of many battles. Richard's team changed tactics, now claiming he had been an essential contributor to SecureSync's success and deserved compensation for his sweat equity in the company. He consulted on key financial decisions. Wilkins argued in court. He introduced Ms. Thompson to important investors. He provided essential support that allowed her to focus on growing the business. This argument infuriated me even more than the asset claims. Richard had contributed nothing of substance to my company's success. If anything, I had succeeded despite his constant demands on my time and energy. Stephanie methodically dismantled this argument by having my CFO and other executives testify about Richard's minimal involvement. We also presented evidence that during critical growth periods for the company, Richard had been on luxurious business trips, many of which, we now knew, were actually rendezvous with Amanda. Mr. Thompson, Stephanie asked during his deposition, can you name a single patent, product feature, or business strategy that you personally developed for SecureSync? I was more involved in the big picture, he hedged. Strategic direction. Can you name a specific strategy you developed? Just one. His vague answers spoke volumes. The most difficult day came when Richard's attorney presented evidence of the affair I had allegedly been having with my company's lead developer, James. It was completely fabricated. James was happily married and one of my most trusted employees, but the accusation was designed to damage my credibility and suggest I had hidden motivations for the divorce. This is completely false, I said firmly when Stephanie asked me about it in court. James is a valued employee and friend, nothing more. Mr. Thompson is clearly projecting his own infidelity onto me. We quickly produced evidence showing Richard's claims were impossible during the times he claimed I was with James. I had been at documented business meetings or public events. Judge Barnes was clearly growing impatient with Richard's increasingly desperate tactics. After dismissing the infidelity claims, she addressed both attorneys. I'm troubled by the direction this case is taking. Mr. Wilkins, your client's allegations appear to be largely unsupported by evidence. Ms. Grant, while your client's asset restructuring may have been legally sound, the timing remains concerning. I strongly suggest both parties consider mediation before we proceed further. Richard's attorney leaned over to whisper in his ear. I could see Richard shaking his head emphatically. He still believed he could win. Your Honor, Wilkins said. My client is open to mediation, but only if all assets as they existed prior to Ms. Thompson's restructuring are on the table. Stephanie responded smoothly. That's a non-starter, Your Honor. The court has already ruled those transactions were legitimate. Then we have no choice but to proceed to trial, Wilkins declared. As we left the courtroom, Heather squeezed my hand. You're doing great. He's the one who looks desperate now. That night, Richard called me for the first time since moving out of our house. This has gone far enough, Morgan. You've made your point. What point would that be, Richard? That you're smarter than me, that you win. Fine. I get it. But we're both spending a fortune on lawyers. Let's settle this reasonably. Reasonably? I repeated. Was it reasonable for you to plan for months to divorce me at the most financially advantageous moment? Was it reasonable to sleep with your assistant while plotting to take half my company? There was a long pause. I made mistakes. I'm sorry. But dragging this through court isn't helping either of us. You know what would help? If you dropped all claims to my company and accepted a settlement based only on our actual joint assets. That's not fair, he protested. We were married for 8 years. I'm entitled to what, Richard? To the rewards of my hard work while you were cheating on me? To the company I built before I even met you. He had no good answer. The call ended without resolution. As the trial date approached, pressure mounted on both sides. Richard's attorney advised him to settle, recognizing their position was weakening. My legal bills were mounting too, but I refused to give in to unreasonable demands. The case was becoming a cautionary tale in business circles. I received messages from other female entrepreneurs thanking me for fighting back, many sharing similar stories of partners who had targeted them for their success. Through it all, I somehow managed to keep SecureSync thriving. The merger was proceeding successfully. Our stock price was climbing, and we had launched 2 new products to critical acclaim. I worked 18-hour days, dividing my time between the company and the legal battle, drawing strength from the supportive friends like Heather and Jessica, who stood by me unfailingly. The night before the trial was set to begin, Richard's attorney called Stephanie with a settlement offer. It was still more than Richard deserved, but substantially less than his initial demands. After 8 months of legal battles, I was ready to end this chapter of my life. Take it, Heather advised when I called her to discuss the offer. You've won the important points. Now it's time to move on. She was right. The next morning, instead of beginning trial, we appeared before Judge Barnes to present our settlement agreement. Both parties have reached an agreement. Judge Barnes confirmed. Yes, Your Honor, Stephanie replied. The terms have been mutually accepted. Richard would receive a cash settlement significantly less than his initial demand, the car he drove, and some personal property. I would retain full ownership of my company, our house, and most importantly, all rights to my patents and intellectual property. As Judge Barnes reviewed the documents, I looked over at Richard. He avoided my gaze, staring straight ahead. The confident, charming man I had married looked diminished somehow, not just defeated, but revealed. The mask had fallen away, showing the person he truly was. The court finds this settlement fair and equitable, Judge Barnes announced. Divorce is granted. Case closed. 8 months of battle concluded in less than 15 minutes. As we left the courtroom, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. It wasn't just about keeping my assets. It was about standing up for myself and refusing to be victimized. Richard tried to approach me in the hallway, but Stephanie smoothly intervened. Any communication can go through counsel, she said firmly. He looked past her to meet my eyes. Morgan, Goodbye, Richard, I said, turning away. There was nothing left to say. The day after the divorce was finalized, I woke up in my Malibu home feeling something I hadn't experienced in nearly a year: peace. The weight that had been pressing on my chest since discovering Richard's betrayal had finally lifted. I wasn't naive enough to believe I was fully healed. That would take time, but I had survived. More than survived, I had prevailed. I took the day off work for the first time in months, something my executive team had been urging me to do. I walked along the beach, letting the Pacific waves wash over my feet, thinking about everything that had happened and what would come next. The financial outcome of the divorce was far better than it might have been. Thanks to our strategic planning, Richard received approximately $4 million, a substantial sum, but a fraction of the $50 million he had expected. He kept his car, his clothes, and some personal items. I retained full ownership of my company, our house, and most importantly, all rights to my patents and intellectual property. The professional consequences for Richard were significant. Word of his actions had spread through financial circles, and his reputation was severely damaged. The investment bank where he worked quietly let him go shortly after the divorce details became known. Last I heard, he was struggling to find comparable employment. Amanda had long since moved on to another potential meal ticket. I returned to the house as the sun was setting and found a message from Heather asking how I was doing. I called her immediately. I feel reborn, I told her. Like I can finally breathe again. You deserve it, she said. What you went through would have broken most people. It nearly broke me, I admitted. There were days I didn't know if I could keep fighting. But you did. And look at you now, stronger than ever. She was right. The experience had changed me fundamentally. I was more cautious, certainly, but also more confident in my ability to overcome adversity. I had faced one of my worst fears, betrayal by someone I loved and trusted, and had come through it. In the weeks that followed, I gradually reestablished my routine. SecureSync was thriving post-merger. Our technology was being implemented by major corporations worldwide, and our stock had doubled since the deal closed. The financial press was calling me one of the most successful female tech entrepreneurs of the decade. But professional success, while satisfying, wasn't enough. The experience with Richard had forced me to reevaluate what truly mattered in life. Trust, authenticity, using my position to help others. 3 months after the divorce, I established the Thompson Foundation for Women in Technology, dedicated to supporting female entrepreneurs in the tech sector. We provided mentorship, networking opportunities, and most importantly, education about financial independence and protection. I want to turn my experience into something positive, I explained during the foundation's launch event. No one should go through what I did, but if my story can help other women protect themselves, then some good has come from it. The foundation quickly gained traction, with successful women from across the tech industry volunteering as mentors. We created workshops specifically addressing financial literacy and legal protection for female entrepreneurs, teaching them how to structure their businesses and personal finances to maintain control of their assets. During one of these workshops, I met Eliza, a brilliant young software developer whose partner had recently left her after she secured major funding for her startup. He told me I'd changed, that my success had made me different, she said, tears in her eyes. Then he demanded half the company. I shared my experience with her, connected her with Stephanie, and helped her develop a strategy to protect her business. 6 months later, she had successfully resolved her situation and was expanding her company internationally. You saved me, she told me afterward. Not just my business, but my belief in myself. Stories like Eliza's became my greatest reward. Each woman who maintained control of her hard-earned success felt like a personal victory. On the personal front, healing took longer. I dated occasionally, but found it difficult to trust. My friends urged patience. The right person won't see you as a meal ticket, Jessica insisted over lunch one day. They'll value you for who you are, not what you have. She was right, of course, but I was in no rush. I had learned the hard way that being alone was far better than being with someone who saw me as a means to an end. 18 months after the divorce, I sold SecureSync to a major tech conglomerate for 3 times its previous valuation. I stayed on as CEO of the division, but with more freedom to focus on projects that mattered to me, including the foundation. I bought a smaller house in Santa Monica. The Malibu mansion held too many memories, and began to build a life that reflected my true values rather than the materialistic showcase my marriage had become. The most unexpected development came 2 years after the divorce, when I received an email from Richard. I almost deleted it unread, but curiosity won out. Morgan, it began. I don't expect forgiveness, nor do I deserve it. I'm writing simply to acknowledge the harm I caused and to say I'm sorry. The man I was then is not someone I'm proud of. Losing everything forced me to confront who I had become. I've spent the past year in therapy, trying to understand why I valued money over genuine connection. This isn't an attempt to re-enter your life. I know that door is rightfully closed forever. I just wanted you to know that your strength forced me to face my weaknesses, and for that, I am paradoxically grateful. I wish you every happiness in your new life. I never responded, but the email provided an unexpected sense of closure. Richard's acknowledgement of his wrongdoing didn't erase the pain he had caused, but it confirmed what I had come to believe. His actions reflected his character flaws, not my worth. Looking back now, I can see how that devastating discovery of Richard's betrayal ultimately led me to a more authentic and fulfilling life. I'm wiser about who I trust, clearer about my values, and more committed to using my success to help others. The financial victory was satisfying, yes, but the true win was reclaiming my sense of self, the knowledge that my worth isn't tied to my wealth or someone else's validation. I built my company from nothing once. I could do it again if necessary. What can't be rebuilt is time wasted with someone who sees you as a means to an end rather than a human being worthy of genuine love. If you're watching this and find yourself in a situation where you suspect someone is with you for what you have rather than who you are, trust your instincts. Protect yourself legally and financially, but more importantly, protect your heart and your sense of self-worth. Have you ever discovered someone was using you for personal gain? How did you handle it? Share your experiences in the comments below, and if this story helped you in any way, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more stories of resilience and renewal. Remember that your greatest asset isn't in your bank account. It's your courage, your wisdom, and your ability to rise stronger after every fall. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength and authenticity in your own. I'm Madison, 28, and until last year, my dad Thomas was my hero. After Mom died when I was 10, it was just us against the world. He promised to always have my back, especially through medical school. Then he married Stephanie, 15 years his junior, and everything changed. The day I overheard them laughing about cutting me off financially, something inside me broke. I didn't confront them. I didn't scream. I simply walked away, silent. They never saw what was coming. Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to see what happens when patience meets justice. Growing up, my father was my entire world. After my mother Laura died of breast cancer when I was 10, Thomas stepped up in ways I never imagined possible for a grieving husband. He was a successful construction company owner by day, but evenings and weekends belonged exclusively to me. He learned to braid my hair, attended every school event, and created new traditions to help us both heal. Our Saturday fishing trips became sacred. Every weekend, rain or shine, we'd wake before dawn, pack our gear and a small cooler of sandwiches, and head to Lake Palmer. Dad would tell stories about Mom while teaching me to cast my line just right. "Your mother had the patience of a saint," he'd say, "just like you need when fishing." Those quiet mornings on the water gave us space to talk about everything or nothing at all. Movie nights were another tradition. Every Friday, we'd alternate picking films. I loved introducing my father to the rom-coms he pretended to hate but secretly enjoyed, while he expanded my horizons with classics from the 70s and 80s. The popcorn always had extra butter, and we had a strict no pausing rule unless it was a true emergency. Education was paramount in our home. My mother had been a dedicated elementary school teacher, and Thomas honored her memory by prioritizing my schooling above all else. When I expressed interest in becoming a doctor in high school, he couldn't have been more supportive. "Your brains come from your mother," he'd say proudly as I brought home straight A's. "And that determination is all you." I worked hard through undergraduate studies, earning a full academic scholarship to Northwestern. Though money wasn't needed for tuition then, Dad insisted on covering my apartment, books, and living expenses. "Focus on your studies, Maddie," he'd say. "The business is doing well, and this is what your mom would want." During summer breaks and occasional weekends, I'd help with administrative tasks at his construction company, Thomas Barrett Construction. I learned the business from the ground up, filing systems, client relations, even basic accounting. The employees treated me like family, many having watched me grow up. It was during those summers the first realized how respected my father was in the industry. His word was his bond, and his integrity unquestionable. The summer before my final year of undergrad, everything changed. Dad met Stephanie Carson at a charity golf tournament benefiting the local children's hospital. She was 35 to his 50, strikingly beautiful with perfect blonde hair and a dazzling smile. She worked in luxury real estate and moved in social circles my father had never accessed before. Their romance was a whirlwind. Within 2 months, she was accompanying him to my weekend visits. I tried to be supportive despite my initial reservations. Stephanie seemed pleasant enough, complimenting my academic achievements and asking thoughtful questions about my medical school applications. "Your father talks about you constantly," she said during our first dinner together. "I feel like I already know you." When Dad called to announce their engagement just 4 months after meeting, I swallowed my concerns and offered congratulations. I'd never seen him so animated since before Mom died. "She makes me feel alive again, Maddie," he confessed during a rare father-daughter lunch without Stephanie. I never expected to find love twice in one lifetime. Their wedding was extravagant by anyone's standards, but especially shocking compared to my father's usually practical nature. The ceremony at the Rosewood Hotel cost more than my entire undergraduate education would have without scholarships. Stephanie wore a designer gown that made the local newspaper, and the guest list included business elites I'd never heard my father mention before. Standing beside him as his best woman, I pushed aside the knot in my stomach. The father who taught me the value of sensible spending was now hosting an event with ice sculptures and rare vintage champagne. When I caught his eye during the reception, however, he looked so genuinely happy that I silenced my concerns. People change, I told myself. And Dad deserved happiness after 15 years alone. As they departed for a 3-week honeymoon tour of the Mediterranean, I hugged him tightly. "I'm happy for you, Dad," I said, meaning it despite my reservations. "Nothing will change between us, Maddie," he promised, kissing my forehead like he had since I was little. "You're still my #1 girl." I believed him completely. Why wouldn't I? He had never given me reason to doubt his word before. As I waved goodbye to the newlyweds, I had no idea that those words would become the first broken promise in a cascade of betrayals that would eventually destroy the relationship I treasured most in the world. The changes began subtly after their return from the honeymoon. Dad's daily calls became every other day, then twice weekly, then whenever he had a moment. Our traditional Sunday dinners were rescheduled, then canceled altogether as Stephanie established new social commitments for them with her friends and colleagues. "We've been invited to the Millers for Sunday brunch," he'd explain apologetically. "Stephanie says Robert Miller could be an important connection for the business." I adjusted, understanding that marriage required compromises. When my acceptance to Northwestern's medical school came through, Dad took me to dinner to celebrate, though Stephanie had a migraine and couldn't join us. Over steaks, he proudly toasted my accomplishment. "Your mother would be over the moon," he said, eyes glistening. "I've been setting aside money for your medical school since you were 12. We'll make this happen, Maddie." But within 2 months of starting my medical program, the comments began. First from Stephanie, then gradually echoed by my father. "Medical school is so expensive these days," Stephanie remarked during one of the rare dinners I was invited to at their new penthouse apartment, purchased shortly after their wedding. "And doctors make so much money afterward. It seems odd to expect parents to foot that bill." Dad shifted uncomfortably but didn't contradict her. A week later, he called suggesting I apply for additional scholarships and loans. "It would be good experience for you to manage some of this yourself," he said, his voice carrying an unfamiliar note of hesitation. "Building credit and responsibility." I was confused but agreed to look into options, despite having already applied for every scholarship available. The conversation left me uneasy, especially since Dad had specifically promised to cover my medical education expenses for years. 3 months into my first semester, I visited their home unannounced, hoping to surprise Dad for his birthday with his favorite homemade carrot cake. Instead, I overheard Stephanie through the partially open office door. "Thomas, she's 27 years old. Most people her age are financially independent," she was saying. "My parents didn't give me a dime after college, and look how successful I became. It builds character." I quietly left without making my presence known, the cake still in its box. That night, Dad called to thank me for the gift I'd left with their doorman, his voice tight and formal as if someone was listening to his side of the conversation. The next blow came when I found myself locked out of the family business accounting software where I'd always helped manage books during breaks. Frank Guthrie, Dad's longtime operations manager, looked uncomfortable when I asked about it. "Your father mentioned you'd be focusing on your studies from now on," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Stephanie's nephew Justin has taken over the administrative work you used to do." Justin, I would learn, was a 22-year-old college dropout with no business experience but a new company car. As the fall semester progressed, my financial situation grew precarious. The tuition payment plan we'd agreed upon showed no activity from Dad's accounts. My calls went to voicemail. My texts received brief responses, "Busy with a project," or "Can we talk next week?" Finally, I received an email that stopped me cold. "Madison, after careful consideration of our current financial obligations and future planning, Stephanie and I have decided we can no longer contribute to your medical school expenses. As an adult with an excellent undergraduate education, you have all the tools needed to secure your own future through loans, scholarships, or perhaps a pause in education to work and save. This transition to full independence will benefit your personal growth. We're sure you understand." Dad. The formal tone and corporate phrasing was so unlike him that I initially thought his account had been hacked. I called immediately, and for once, he answered. "Dad, about that email?" "Yes," he interrupted, his voice oddly detached. "I stand by what I wrote, Madison." "But we had a plan," I pressed, trying to keep panic from my voice. "You promised." Mom's insurance money was specifically set aside for this. There was a pause, then what sounded like a muffled conversation. When he returned, his voice was firmer. Plans change. Stephanie and I have financial advisors now who've helped us realize we need to focus on retirement planning. The business has expenses. The market is uncertain. Can we talk about this in person? I pleaded. There's nothing to discuss, he replied. This is final, Madison. You're an adult now. The call ended, and I sat staring at my phone in disbelief. The construction company was more successful than ever according to industry publications. Their social media showed lavish vacations and a new summer home while I was eating ramen and working overnight shifts at a campus coffee shop to make rent. That weekend, I drove to their penthouse, determined to have a face-to-face conversation. The concierge informed me that Mr. and Mrs. Barrett were at their lake house for the weekend, the new 7-figure property on Lake Michigan. Not our modest fishing cabin that had apparently been sold without my knowledge. With tuition due and no family support, I took emergency loans at exorbitant interest rates to avoid withdrawal from the program. I picked up 2 more jobs, administrative work at the university library and weekend shifts at a nearby urgent care facility as a medical receptionist. My grades suffered as my work hours expanded, and sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. Through it all, I maintained my dignity. I didn't beg. I didn't complain on social media. I simply did what needed to be done, drawing on the resilience my father had once taught me to value. The irony wasn't lost on me. When Christmas came, I received a generic card signed by both of them and a $100 gift card to a department store, less than Dad had spent on my birthday gifts since I was a teenager. I sent a polite thank you note, maintaining the facade of normalcy while working a double shift on Christmas Day for the holiday pay. The final indignity came in February when I fractured my wrist after slipping on ice while rushing between jobs. With my high-deductible emergency insurance, the medical bills were crippling. I swallowed my pride and called Dad. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important, I explained, detailing the injury and financial strain. You should be more careful, he replied. And I could hear Stephanie's voice in the background. We're actually boarding a flight to Aspen right now. Can't this wait? The bills can't, I said quietly. Madison. Part of being an adult is handling unexpected expenses, he said, sounding like he was reading from a script. Maybe this is a good learning opportunity about emergency funds. As they announced final boarding for his first-class flight to a ski vacation, my father denied help for medical bills that amounted to less than a single night's stay at their luxury resort. That was the moment I realized the father I knew was gone, replaced by someone I no longer recognized. The following months became a blur of exhaustion. I worked 20-hour days between my studies and 3 jobs, sleeping in brief increments between shifts and classes. My weight dropped until scrubs hung from my frame. Dark circles became permanent fixtures under my eyes. My once stellar academic performance slipped to barely passing, putting my medical career at risk before it even began. My former classmates noted the change but didn't understand its cause. I maintained the fiction that everything was fine at home, too proud to admit my father had abandoned me financially. Only my roommate Rachel knew the full truth. You need to take care of yourself, Madison, she insisted one night after finding me asleep over my textbooks, still wearing my coffee shop uniform. This isn't sustainable. I don't have a choice, I replied, rubbing my eyes. 1 more year and I'll have completed the classroom portion. Then clinical rotations have more predictable hours. Rachel wasn't convinced. Have you tried talking to your dad again? Maybe seeing you would make a difference. I shook my head. He doesn't return my calls anymore. My 28th birthday came and went without acknowledgement from my father, the first time in my life he'd forgotten. No card, no call, not even a text message. I told myself it didn't matter. But that night I cried myself to sleep clutching the last birthday gift my mother had given me, a simple silver locket with her picture inside. 2 weeks later, Rachel's persistent encouragement finally broke through my resistance. Go see him in person, she urged. He can't ignore you face to face. The worst that happens is nothing changes. But at least you'll know you tried everything. After finishing a morning shift at the coffee shop, I drove to my childhood home, the sprawling Tudor where I'd grown up, now extensively remodeled under Stephanie's direction. I hadn't been invited back since their wedding. As I approached, I noticed several luxury vehicles in the circular driveway and hesitated. They appeared to be hosting some kind of gathering. I parked on the street, suddenly aware of my appearance. Dark circles under my eyes, coffee shop uniform under my coat, hair hastily pulled back. For a moment, I considered leaving, but determination pushed me forward. This was my father. Surely once he saw me, really saw what his abandonment had done, his paternal instincts would resurface. No one answered my ring at the front door, but I could hear music and laughter from the backyard. Moving around the side path, I recognized my father's distinctive laugh mingling with others. I paused at the edge of the stone patio, taking in the scene before making my presence known. A dozen well-dressed people lounged around the redesigned backyard with its new infinity pool and outdoor kitchen. Stephanie stood by my father, her hand possessively on his arm as they chatted with another couple. Crystal glasses of champagne glinted in the sunlight. A banner hung across the pool house. Bon voyage. My research quickly revealed the truth. They were hosting a party to celebrate their upcoming 2-month European tour. I was about to step forward when Stephanie's voice carried clearly across the space. Thomas made the reservations for the villa in Tuscany yesterday. For weeks there. Then the private cruise through the Greek islands. The man beside her whistled appreciatively. That's quite the getaway. Business must be booming. My father chuckled, swirling his champagne. It's amazing what you can afford when you cut unnecessary expenses. Stephanie laughed, the sound like breaking glass to my ears. Like supporting grown children through endless education? What was it going to be after medical school? A PhD? Another specialty? Instead of defending me, my father joined her laughter. Madison always did have her hand out. Laura spoiled her. And I continued the tradition. Stephanie helped me see how enabling that dependency was. You should have seen her face when he finally cut the cord, Stephanie added, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper that still carried clearly. Like a teenager losing cell phone privileges. Best financial decision I've made in years, my father agreed, raising his glass. To financial freedom and European adventures. As they clinked glasses, I stepped back into the shadows, my heart shattering. This wasn't a reluctant decision made under pressure. They were laughing about my struggles, celebrating them. My education wasn't an investment in their eyes. It was a burden they'd happily shed. I retreated silently, tears blurring my vision as I fumbled for my car keys. Neither my father nor any of their guests noticed me. I managed to drive 3 blocks before pulling over. Violent sobs racking my body. Rachel found me there an hour later after I'd called her barely coherent. She held me while I repeated the cruel words I'd overheard, each one a knife to my heart. I don't understand, I whispered. How could he say those things? How could he laugh about it? Rachel's expression hardened with protective fury. Because he's not the man you thought he was, Madison. Maybe he never was. As the shock began to fade, something else took its place, a cold, clear resolve. The father I loved was gone. If he had ever truly existed. In his place was a stranger who laughed at my suffering while drinking champagne. What are you going to do? Rachel asked as she drove us home. My hands still shaking too badly to take the wheel. I stared out the window, watching familiar neighborhoods pass by. Nothing, I said finally. Nothing, she echoed, confused. I'm not going to confront him. I'm not going to beg. I'm not going to scream or cry where he can see me. My voice steadied as conviction grew. He thinks I'm defeated. Let him keep thinking that. Rachel glanced at me, concern mingling with curiosity. And then what? The plan wasn't fully formed yet, but the seed had been planted. And then I'm going to focus on surviving, on graduating, on becoming someone he can't hurt anymore. What I didn't say aloud was the thought crystallizing beneath the pain. I would also find a way to show my father exactly what he had thrown away. Not out of vengeance, but because some lessons can only be learned through consequences. The day after overhearing my father and Stephanie's cruel celebration, I made a decision that would change everything. I would maintain complete dignity through silence. No angry confrontations. No tearful pleas. No social media callouts. I would simply disappear from their lives as thoroughly as they had removed me from theirs. My first step was calling my grandmother Elizabeth, my mother's mother. Though health issues had limited our visits in recent years, we maintained regular phone contact. I hadn't told her about the financial abandonment, not wanting to worry her or create family conflict. Now, I held nothing back. "I wondered when you'd call," she said after I finished my story, her voice heavy with sadness. "Thomas hasn't brought you to visit in over a year. That wasn't like him." "I'm sorry to burden you with this," I apologized. "Nonsense," she replied, her tone sharpening. "Your mother would be turning in her grave. There's something you should know, Madison. Something I assume Thomas would have told you years ago." What followed was a revelation that left me stunned. My mother had left a separate trust specifically for my education, enough to cover medical school entirely. Furthermore, she had left a significant inheritance that I was to receive at 25. My father had been the trustee, with full control until I reached the designated age. "I never questioned when you didn't mention it after your 25th birthday," grandmother explained. "I assumed you and Thomas had decided to leave it invested. He never told me." I whispered, not a word about any inheritance or trust. The following day, I met with James Pearson, an attorney specializing in estate law who had been my grandmother's lawyer for decades. The gray-haired man listened intently, taking careful notes as I explained the situation. "Based on what you've shared and your grandmother's documentation, there appear to be serious irregularities," he said when I finished. "As trustee, your father had fiduciary responsibilities he may have violated. We'll need to investigate exactly what's happened to those funds." "What do I need to do?" I asked. "Gather documents, bank statements, any communications about finances. Meanwhile, say nothing to your father or his wife. Element of surprise is crucial in these cases." I followed his advice precisely, collecting every email, text message, and bank record I could find. Rachel let me use her laptop after mine mysteriously broke following a brief visit by Stephanie's nephew Justin to my apartment building, supposedly to deliver Christmas gifts months late. Through it all, I maintained my grueling work and study schedule. Though my body ached with exhaustion, a new determination fueled me. Each shift at the coffee shop, each hour of studying through bleary eyes, strengthened my resolve rather than weakening it. During spring break, while classmates traveled to beaches, I took a different journey to visit Frank Guthrie, my father's former operations manager who had recently retired after 20 years with the company. Over coffee in his modest home, Frank revealed troubling information. "Your father's business practices changed after the marriage," he explained cautiously. Stephanie's brother-in-law was brought in as the new financial officer despite having no construction experience. Accounts were moved. Vendors changed. When I raised concerns about certain tax strategies they were implementing, I was offered early retirement with a generous severance, contingent on a strict non-disclosure agreement. "But you're talking to me now," I observed. Frank's weathered face showed the first smile since my arrival. The NDA covered business operations, not personal conversations with my goddaughter about family matters. With Frank's guidance, I began to understand the broader picture of what had happened to my father's once ethical business and potentially to my mother's money. He connected me with former colleagues who shared similar concerns, creating a network of information that James Pearson integrated into his investigation. Meanwhile, my father and Stephanie lived their best lives on social media, European tours, luxury purchases, charity galas where they posed as philanthropists. The construction company website featured their smiling faces promising family values and integrity in every project. The irony was painful, but I remained silent, watching and documenting. In late April, my phone rang with my father's number for the first time in months. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to his message requesting a family dinner the following weekend. "We have some exciting news to share," he said, sounding uncharacteristically nervous. "Please come, Madison. It's important." I consulted with James before responding with a brief text accepting the invitation. The attorney's investigation was nearly complete, and the timing seemed providential. "Be careful," Rachel warned as she helped me select an outfit for the dinner. "They must want something." "I know," I replied, choosing a simple black dress that concealed how thin I'd become. "But whatever it is, it's giving us an opportunity." The night before the dinner, I received a call from grandmother Elizabeth. "James briefed me on the findings," she said. "Are you sure you want to proceed with this? There's no going back once certain legal actions are taken." I thought of my mother, who had worked so hard to provide for my future. I thought of my younger self who had trusted her father completely. I thought of the laughter I'd heard on that patio as they celebrated cutting me off. "I'm sure," I replied, my voice steady. "It's not about revenge. It's about justice and consequences for choices freely made." "Your mother would be proud of your strength," she said softly. And heartbroken about Thomas. As I hung up, I felt a curious sense of calm. Tomorrow would change everything. But tonight I would sleep peacefully knowing I had maintained my dignity through silence and patience, the very values my father had once taught me. The restaurant my father selected for our family dinner was La Maison, an upscale French establishment where entrees started at $50, more than I earned in a full shift at the coffee shop. I arrived precisely on time, refusing to give them the satisfaction of appearing eager or desperate. Thomas and Stephanie were already seated at a corner table, champagne chilling beside them. My father stood as I approached, his expression a mixture of relief and apprehension. He moved as if to hug me, then awkwardly extended his hand instead when I maintained my distance. "Madison, you look," he paused, finally noticing my weight loss and the exhaustion etched into my face. "Different. Working 3 jobs while attending medical school will do that," I replied evenly, taking my seat. Stephanie quickly interjected, her smile practiced and perfect. "We've missed you, Madison. It's been too long." She wore a new diamond tennis bracelet that caught the light with every gesture, likely worth more than a year of my tuition. "Has it?" I asked, my tone neutral. "I wouldn't know. I've been rather busy surviving." An uncomfortable silence fell, broken by the server taking my drink order. Just water, as alcohol was a luxury I could no longer afford. My father cleared his throat. "We have some exciting news, Madison. The business is expanding. We're opening offices in 3 new states and developing a luxury residential division." "Congratulations," I said, taking a sip of water. "Thomas has worked so hard for this," Stephanie added, placing her hand over his. "It's a dream coming true. The thing is," my father continued, "we need to consolidate some family assets for the initial investment phase. Just temporarily, of course." And there was the real reason for this reconciliation attempt. Not concern for my well-being. Not regret for their actions. They needed something from me. "What assets would those be?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Thomas shifted uncomfortably. "There are some remaining trusts from your mother's estate. Technically, they're in your name. But they've always been intended for family purposes. We need you to sign some transfer paperwork." The audacity was breathtaking. After cutting me off completely, after laughing about my financial struggles, they expected me to hand over my mother's money for their business expansion. "I see," I said calmly. "And what do these trusts amount to?" They exchanged glances before Stephanie answered smoothly. Just a small portion of the overall investment package, around $200,000. I nodded thoughtfully. Remembering James Pearson's findings, my mother's education trust and inheritance together totaled over $1 million, not the $200,000 they claimed. My father had already misappropriated a significant portion. And if I sign these papers, what happens to my medical school situation? I asked. Thomas had the decency to look uncomfortable. Well, business investments need time to mature. Once we're established in these new markets, we could revisit some educational support. Perhaps next year. Stephanie quickly added. Family helps family, Madison. This expansion will benefit everyone eventually. I took another sip of water, letting the moment stretch until they grew visibly nervous. Finally, I set down my glass precisely on its coaster. You know, it's interesting you should mention family helping family, I said softly. I've been thinking a lot about that concept recently. Then you understand, Thomas said, relief evident in his voice. I understand perfectly, I replied. I understand that when I needed help that was promised to me. Help that was actually funded by my mother's insurance money, specifically set aside for my education. You abandoned me. Not only that, but you laughed about it. Celebrated it. Their expressions froze. My father recovered first. I don't know what you're talking about. The party by your new pool, I clarified. The one celebrating your European vacation. I was there, Dad. I heard everything. The color drained from his face as Stephanie's eyes narrowed dangerously. Madison, sometimes things get said in jest, he began. Save it. I interrupted, still maintaining my calm demeanor. I'm not interested in explanations or excuses. I'm simply declining to sign any paperwork transferring funds that rightfully belong to me. Thomas's expression hardened. This is disappointing, Madison. Very disappointing. I thought you understood family loyalty. I learned about loyalty from you, I replied, standing up. This dinner is over. You're making a mistake, Stephanie hissed, abandoning her pleasant facade. Thomas has been carrying you your entire life. It's time you gave something back. I looked at her, then at my father, who made no move to contradict her characterization of his decades of parenting as a burden. No, I said simply. I don't think I'm the one who's made mistakes here. As I turned to leave, my father grabbed my wrist. Madison, wait. Let's talk about this reasonably. Maybe we can work something out. I gently but firmly removed his hand. There's nothing to work out. Enjoy your dinner. I have a night shift to get to. Walking away from that table was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, but also the most liberating. Behind me, I could hear their urgent whispers escalating into a tense argument. I didn't look back. Outside the restaurant, I texted James Pearson. Dinner concluded. They confirmed they want access to the trusts. Proceed as discussed. His response came seconds later. Documentation filed first thing tomorrow. Prepare for reaction. That night at work, my phone exploded with calls and texts from my father, growing increasingly desperate as the evening progressed. Madison, please call me. We need to talk about this like adults. You're overreacting to something you misunderstood. This expansion is important for our family's future. By morning, the tone had shifted. You're making a serious mistake. After everything I've done for you, Stephanie says we should just proceed without your signature. I forwarded each message to James without responding. As his legal team had explained, every communication attempting to pressure me strengthened our case. 2 days later, Thomas and Stephanie's social media showed them boarding a private flight to New York, business expansion meetings, the caption proclaimed cheerfully. What they didn't know was that waiting in New York was not only a meeting with potential investors, but also legal papers formally challenging my father's management of my mother's estate, and initiating an investigation into potential financial improprieties at Thomas Barrett Construction. The facade they had so carefully constructed was about to shatter completely. The legal documents hit like a tsunami. My father was served with papers regarding the misappropriation of my mother's trust while sitting in a meeting with potential investors in New York. Simultaneously, the construction company received notice of an independent audit triggered by discrepancies reported to regulatory authorities. I wasn't present for any of this, but Frank Guthrie's network kept me informed. Apparently, Thomas turned ghostly pale upon reading the legal documents, excused himself from the meeting, and never returned. The investors, sensing trouble, withdrew their interest immediately. For 3 days, my phone remained silent. Then came the deluge. First, a call from my father that went to voicemail. Madison, what have you done? Call me immediately. Next, an email from Stephanie. Your vindictive actions are destroying your father's life's work. Is that what you want? To destroy your own family? Then a text that showed the first crack in my father's armor. Please, Maddie. We need to talk. This has gone too far. I forwarded everything to James without response. His advice had been clear: no direct communication until the legal process was underway. A week after the initial filings, the preliminary findings from the financial investigation revealed the full extent of what had happened. My mother's education trust, over $300, 000 specifically designated for my medical training, had been systematically drained over the 2 years since my father's marriage. The larger inheritance, nearly $750,000, had been transferred into accounts accessible only by Thomas and, surprisingly, Stephanie, despite her having no legal standing as trustee. More disturbing were the business findings. Under new management, Thomas Barrett Construction had engaged in questionable billing practices, tax strategies that bordered on evasion, and had misrepresented assets to secure loans. The company that had once been known for integrity was now a house of cards built on increasingly desperate financial maneuvers. As the legal pressure mounted, their perfect life began to publicly unravel. The European vacation was abruptly canceled. The country club membership was quietly relinquished. The luxury car leases were terminated. Each step documented on the financial records that James's team meticulously compiled. Yet still, Stephanie maintained appearances on social media. Simplifying our lives. Read the caption beneath a photo of their scaled-back lifestyle, presenting choice as virtue rather than necessity. The business partners began distancing themselves. Invitations to social events stopped. The whispers in professional circles grew louder. Thomas Barrett, once respected throughout the industry, found himself increasingly isolated as former colleagues chose self-preservation over loyalty to a sinking ship. 3 weeks after the initial legal filings, my doorbell rang at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. Through the peephole, I saw my father standing alone, shoulders slumped, looking older than I'd ever seen him. After a moment's hesitation, I opened the door but didn't invite him in. "Madison," he said, his voice hoarse. "Please." 5 minutes. Against my better judgment and James's explicit advice, I stepped aside to let him enter my small apartment. He looked around at the modest furnishings, the textbooks stacked on every surface, the coffee shop uniform hung to dry over the shower rod visible through the bathroom door. "You've been living like this while he trailed off, unable to finish the thought. "Yes," I said simply, offering no absolution. He sank onto my second-hand couch, head in his hands. "The company is collapsing. The audit found irregularities. Stephanie's brother-in-law has disappeared with significant funds. Most of our assets are frozen pending investigation." I remained standing, arms crossed. "And my mother's money? The trusts you were supposed to protect for me?" He couldn't meet my eyes. "Gone. Investments that failed. The new house. The trips." Stephanie had expensive tastes, and I wanted to give her everything. "At my expense." "I told myself you'd be fine," he whispered. "That doctors make plenty of money eventually. That you were an adult who should stand on your own." While you and Stephanie laughed about cutting me off, I added, the memory still painful despite everything. He flinched. I have no excuse for that. None. I became someone I don't recognize, Madison. Someone your mother would have despised. For the first time, tears welled in his eyes. Not manipulative tears, but the crushing realization of exactly what he had done and what he had lost. Stephanie's filed for divorce, he continued after collecting himself. When the money started disappearing, so did her affection. She's claiming she knew nothing about the financial irregularities. That it was all me. I felt no satisfaction at this news, only a profound sadness. I'm sorry that's happening to you, Dad, but it doesn't change what you did. I know, he acknowledged, finally looking directly at me. I don't expect forgiveness, Madison. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to hear from me that you were right to do what you did. I betrayed you. I betrayed your mother's memory. And I'll spend whatever years I have left trying to make amends, even knowing it can never be enough. As he rose to leave, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. This was your mother's. I kept it in my desk drawer all these years. It should be with you. Inside was my mother's engagement ring, a modest diamond that had meant everything to her. She wanted you to have this when you finished medical school, he said quietly, another promise I nearly broke. After he left, I sat holding the ring for a long time, tears flowing freely. Not for the money lost, but for the father I had lost long before any legal proceedings began. The court ruling came 3 months later. Full restitution of my mother's trusts from the remaining assets of Thomas Barrett Construction, plus damages for breach of fiduciary duty. The company would survive in name only, a shadow of its former self. My father would face no criminal charges, but his reputation, once his most valuable asset, was irreparably damaged. As for Stephanie, she disappeared back to the social circles she'd come from, another wealthy husband already in her sights according to mutual acquaintances. The victory felt hollow. I had won back my financial security but lost the only parent I had left. The price of justice was higher than I could have imagined, yet necessary all the same. 1 year after the court ruling, I stood in the bright April sunshine outside Northwestern Memorial Hospital, newly graduated and beginning my residency in internal medicine. The journey had been arduous, but the restored funds from my mother's trusts had allowed me to focus on my education in those final crucial semesters. With my first significant decision about the recovered money, I established the Laura Barrett Memorial Scholarship, a fund specifically designed to support medical students facing unexpected financial hardship. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was now helping others in the situation I had faced, turning personal pain into something meaningful. My father and I maintained minimal contact during that year. Occasional texts, brief phone calls on holidays. He had moved to a small apartment and taken a position with a former competitor who valued his technical knowledge, if not his business acumen. His humility in accepting a subordinate role after decades as owner spoke to genuine remorse. Grandmother Elizabeth had become my emotional anchor, her wisdom helping me navigate the complex feelings of loss, vindication, and lingering grief for the relationship that had once been. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, she counseled. It means freeing yourself from the burden of anger so you can move forward. I was attempting to follow her advice, though the process was neither linear nor simple. On a crisp autumn day, I received an unexpected invitation from my father to attend grandmother's 75th birthday celebration. She had apparently insisted he participate in planning the small gathering at her assisted living facility. It would be the first time we would be in the same room socially since the confrontation at La Maison nearly 2 years earlier. When I arrived, he was hanging streamers with the awkward determination of someone unaccustomed to decorating, but trying his best. Our eyes met across the community room, and after a moment's hesitation, he offered a tentative smile. She insisted on purple everything, he said, gesturing to the lavender decorations. Said at 75 she'd earned the right to demand her favorite color. Mom always said Elizabeth would get more eccentric with age, I replied, the shared memory creating a momentary bridge across the chasm between us. The celebration was small but joyful. Grandmother, resplendent in various shades of purple, held court from her favorite chair, regaling her friends with stories from her youth. I noticed my father had brought her favorite Black Forest cake from the bakery across town, a 90-minute round trip he had made without complaint. As the party wound down, he approached me hesitantly. I've been volunteering at the free clinic on Wilson Street, he said. Just maintenance work, fixing things around the building. Nothing special. I knew the clinic well. It served primarily uninsured patients and operated on a shoestring budget. They always need help, I acknowledged. They mentioned they're short on medical volunteers, he continued, studying the floor. I thought, maybe someday, if you wanted. The invitation hung in the air between us, not presuming forgiveness, but offering a path towards something new. Something that honored who we had been to each other without ignoring what had happened. I could check my schedule, I said finally. They probably need evening coverage. His relief was palpable. Only if you want to, Madison. No pressure. Later that evening, Grandmother took my hand as I prepared to leave. Progress, she asked, nodding toward my father who was carefully packing leftover cake for her to enjoy later. Small steps, I replied. Those are the only kind that last, she said wisely. Over the following months, those small steps continued. My father and I occasionally volunteered at the same clinic shifts, working in different capacities, but gradually relearning how to exist in shared space. He never asked for more than I was willing to give, respecting boundaries I needed to maintain. Through it all, I built my medical practice with a special focus on accessibility, eventually establishing a sliding-scale payment system that ensured patients received care regardless of financial circumstances. The lessons of my own experience informed every aspect of my professional ethics. When the opportunity came to buy into a practice, I used part of my restored inheritance, completing the circle my mother had intended when she set aside those funds for my future. The Laura Barrett Memorial Scholarship continued to grow, supporting a new generation of doctors who might otherwise have abandoned their dreams. My father never returned to his former financial status, but found unexpected contentment in a simpler life focused on rebuilding what truly mattered. The man who had once valued expansion and impression now seemed at peace in a one-bedroom apartment, driving a 10-year-old sedan and spending weekends volunteering rather than networking. 5 years after that fateful day when I overheard them laughing about cutting me off, I invited my father to the opening of my new medical clinic. As he admired the plaque dedicating the pediatric wing to my mother's memory, I saw both regret and pride warring in his expression. She would be so proud of you, Maddie, he said softly. Everything you've built, especially after everything I finished for him. He nodded, accepting the gentle acknowledgement of our painful history. I'll never stop being sorry. I know, I replied, but I've stopped needing you to be. That evening, as I locked up my new clinic, I realized the journey had transformed us both. My father had lost everything he thought he valued, only to rediscover what truly mattered. And I had found strength I never knew I possessed, along with the wisdom to understand that true justice isn't about punishment, but restoration, not just of what was taken, but of who we are meant to be. The betrayal that once defined my life had become simply one chapter in a longer story, a painful but necessary lesson in boundaries, resilience, and the courage to stand up for oneself even against those we love most. As I drive home today, I still carry my mother's locket close to my heart, but the weight of anger no longer accompanies it. Some relationships can be rebuilt after betrayal, though never the same as before. Some cannot. The wisdom lies in knowing the difference and in finding peace either way. What about you? Have you ever had to stand up to someone you loved when they were wrong? Or found yourself having to rebuild trust that was broken? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and thank you for being part of this journey with me. Remember that sometimes the most powerful response to betrayal isn't rage or revenge. It's the quiet dignity of becoming exactly who you were always meant to be, despite those who failed to believe in you. My name is Amber Davis, 34 years old, and I never thought I would be the one cutting off my entire family. But when they skipped my son Logan's birthday for the 5th consecutive year, something inside me finally snapped. For days after his empty 9th birthday party, my mom texted demanding $2,700 for our annual family cabin weekend. That text was the last straw in years of heartbreak and disrespect. If you have ever had to stand up to family who did not value what matters most to you, please hit like and subscribe while I share how I finally taught them that my son deserves better. I grew up in Portland in what I always thought was a close-knit family. The Davis family had a reputation to maintain in our community: successful, attractive, and above all, perfect on the surface. My mother, Diane, was always obsessed with appearances. Every Christmas card had to be professionally photographed, every dinner party meticulously planned, and every family vacation documented for maximum social media impact. My father, Gerald, never contradicted her. He simply funded her vision of family perfection and stayed in the background. My sister, Rebecca, was the golden child who could do no wrong. She married a doctor, produced 2 perfect daughters who excelled at dance and piano, and somehow always managed to host the most enviable dinner parties despite her busy schedule as a part-time interior designer. My brother Ethan followed the expected path too: business degree, startup success before 30, and marriage to Madison, a former college cheerleader whose beauty and charm made her the perfect corporate wife. Then there was me, the one who always felt slightly out of step with the Davis family expectations. I met Ryan Mitchell in my junior year of college. He was studying engineering. Brilliant, but from a working-class background that my mother subtly disapproved of from the moment they met. When we got married right after graduation, my parents threw us a lavish wedding. But I could see the disappointment in my mother's eyes that Ryan didn't come with family connections or inherited wealth. The early years of our marriage were financially tight. Ryan found work at a promising engineering firm, but entry-level salaries in Portland barely covered our small apartment and student loans. I worked as a marketing coordinator, and we lived paycheck to paycheck, but were blissfully happy in our own little world. When I got pregnant with Logan, there was genuine excitement from my family. My mother threw an extravagant baby shower, my sister handed down designer baby clothes her daughters had barely worn, and my father talked about college funds and family legacies. For a moment, I felt fully embraced by the Davis family circle. Logan's birth was complicated. After 36 hours of labor and an emergency C-section, I held my beautiful son and felt a love so fierce it took my breath away. Ryan was my rock through the difficult recovery, taking family leave to care for both of us. My mother visited daily for the first week, rearranging our apartment and offering advice that sounded more like criticism. But I was too exhausted and overwhelmed to mind. I just wanted Logan to be surrounded by family who loved him. Logan's first birthday was everything I could have hoped for. My parents hosted it at their spacious home. My mother spared no expense on decorations and catering, and the entire extended family attended. Logan was showered with expensive gifts, and countless photos were taken for social media. I remember feeling so grateful, watching my son being celebrated by everyone who mattered to me. What I didn't realize then was that my family's attention was conditional, present when it made them look good, absent when it didn't serve their interests. The family dynamic had always revolved around appearances and status, but having Logan made me see things differently. I wanted him to grow up knowing his worth wasn't tied to achievements or image. Our family had a tradition of expensive shared vacations. Every summer, we would rent beach houses or mountain cabins, with costs split equally among adult family members. Even before Logan. These trips strained our budget, but Ryan and I made sacrifices to participate because family connection seemed worth it. My parents, sister, and brother never acknowledged the disproportionate financial burden these trips placed on us compared to their much higher incomes. Just after Logan's first birthday, Ryan's company went through unexpected layoffs. As a newer employee, he was among the first let go. Our already tight finances became desperate as Ryan searched for a new position in a competitive market. I picked up freelance marketing work while caring for Logan, and we cut every expense we could. Through it all, I remained determined to make Logan's birthday special. Even when we could barely afford it, I planned meaningful celebrations, baked homemade cakes, and created traditions that didn't depend on lavish spending. What mattered most was showing Logan he was loved, valued, and important, a lesson I wanted my family to reinforce. During this challenging time, I noticed my family's invitations became less frequent, except for the mandatory annual vacations that we were still expected to fund equally. When I tentatively mentioned our financial struggles to my mother, she suggested Ryan network harder and reminded me that appearances matter when you're looking for opportunities. That response should have been my warning about what was to come. Logan's 5th birthday fell on a Saturday in April. For weeks, he talked excitedly about having his grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins at his superhero-themed party. I had sent out invitations a month in advance, confirmed with everyone, and received assurances they would attend. Ryan had found a new job by then, but we were still recovering financially from his period of unemployment. Nevertheless, I stretched our budget to rent a small party room at the local community center, ordered a custom cake, and put together goodie bags for the handful of kindergarten friends and family members we had invited. The morning of the party, my mother called. "Something's come up," she said vaguely. "Your father and I won't be able to make it to Logan's little party today. Give him our love and tell him we'll drop off his gift next week." Before I could respond, my sister Rebecca called with a similar excuse. One of her daughters had a last-minute dance practice she couldn't miss. Then my brother Ethan texted that he and Madison had been invited to a networking brunch with potential investors. I stood in the kitchen, phone in hand, wondering how I would explain to Logan that none of his extended family would be at his birthday. He had been counting down the days, eager to show his cousins his new superhero moves and have his grandfather see him blow out all 5 candles by himself. "Who was that?" Ryan asked, coming into the kitchen with Logan still in pajamas, both of them working on morning crafts for the party. "My family," I said quietly, motioning for him to follow me into the hallway where Logan couldn't hear. "They're all canceling. Every single one of them." Ryan's face flushed with anger. "Are you serious?" "They confirmed last week." "I know," I whispered, fighting back tears. "What do we tell him?" We decided to focus on making the day special with those who did show up, for of Logan's kindergarten friends and their parents, plus our neighbors with their son who had become Logan's best friend. But throughout the afternoon, I caught Logan looking toward the door every time it opened, his face falling slightly when it wasn't his grandparents or cousins arriving. That evening, after Logan was in bed surrounded by his new toys but emotionally depleted from disappointment, I called my mother. "How was the party?" she asked casually. "Logan missed you," I said, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. "He kept looking for you and Dad and his cousins." "These things happen," she replied dismissively. "We'll make it up to him sometime. By the way, Rebecca's Sophia has a dance recital next weekend. The whole family will be there. It's her first solo performance. We're all going out for a celebration dinner after." The next day, scrolling through social media, I saw what came up that was so important. My sister had posted photos from Sophia's dress rehearsal, the one that supposedly conflicted with Logan's birthday. The pictures showed my parents, brother, sister-in-law, and other extended family members all smiling in the audience. The timestamp showed it had ended 2 hours before Logan's party even started. When Ryan saw the photos, his patience snapped. That's it. They're done. I'm not subjecting Logan to people who clearly don't value him. They're still his family, I argued weakly, though my heart wasn't in it. Maybe there's an explanation. I confronted my mother the next day, showing her the social media posts. Instead of apologizing, she turned it around on me. Sophia has been working on that dance for months. It's a big achievement. Logan just turned 5. He'll have plenty more birthdays. He probably didn't even notice we weren't there. But he had noticed, and in that moment, I realized my mother was gaslighting me, minimizing Logan's feelings and my own hurt to avoid taking responsibility. The pattern continued in subtle ways. When family gatherings occurred at my parents' home, Rebecca's daughters received lavish attention, while Logan was often overlooked. Comments about Ryan's job or our modest home were disguised as concern. And the pressure to contribute equally to family vacations persisted, despite the obvious income disparity. You need to prioritize family experiences, my mother said when I expressed concern about the cost of that summer's beach house. These memories are priceless for the children. What went unsaid was that some children's experiences were apparently more valued than others. Despite the birthday disappointment, I maintained contact with my family, hoping things would improve. I wanted Logan to have extended family in his life, even as I began to question what kind of influence they were having on him. That summer we scraped together our share for the beach vacation, where Logan watched his cousins receive daily gifts and special outings while my parents conveniently forgot their earlier promises to take him fishing or build sandcastles. Next time will be different, I told myself, even as Ryan grew increasingly frustrated with my family's treatment of our son. They just need to see how special he is. Logan's 6th birthday fell during a school week, so we planned his celebration for the following Saturday. I called my family members individually, emphasizing how much their presence would mean to Logan after missing his previous birthday. Each one promised to attend. The day arrived, a sports-themed party at the local park with games and activities I had carefully planned. Logan bounced with excitement all morning, especially about showing his baseball skills to his grandfather, who had played in college. 2 hours before the party, the cancellations began rolling in. My father had a client emergency. My mother couldn't leave a charity committee meeting. Rebecca's daughters both suddenly had stomach bugs, though social media later showed them perfectly healthy at a water park that same afternoon. Ethan and Madison simply didn't show up or call. Logan's face when he realized they weren't coming remains seared in my memory. He didn't cry or throw a tantrum. Instead, his small shoulders slumped, and he said quietly, "It's okay, Mom. The park is still fun." His maturity broke my heart. Ryan had taken on weekend construction work to help our finances, and I saw the toll it was taking on him. He was exhausted but still helped set up the party, played with the kids who did attend, and comforted me that night when I finally broke down in tears after Logan was asleep. "They're never going to change," Ryan said, holding me close. "At some point, we need to accept that and protect Logan from thinking he's not important enough." "But they're his family," I protested weakly. "I don't want him to grow up without extended family like I did. My own grandparents had died before I was born, and I had always envied friends with large family circles." The pattern continued for Logan's 7th birthday. This time, the excuses were even thinner. A last-minute spa day my mother couldn't reschedule, a golf game my father wouldn't miss, cousin activities that somehow took priority again. Meanwhile, our financial struggles intensified. Logan needed braces that insurance only partially covered. Our car required expensive repairs. The water heater in our modest home failed during the coldest week of winter. Through it all, my family's lifestyle became increasingly luxurious. European vacations documented extensively on social media, my mother's designer wardrobe updates, my sister's home renovation featured in a local magazine. Yet we were still expected to contribute equally to family vacations and gifts. When my father turned 60, my mother insisted everyone contribute $500 toward a surprise golf weekend. When I mentioned our tight budget, she suggested I manage money better or ask Ryan to find higher-paying work. The exclusion extended beyond birthdays. Logan wasn't included in Cousin's Day outings my mother organized. When Rebecca's daughters had school performances, the entire family attended and brought flowers. When Logan earned a spot in the science fair, no one could make it. His achievements, reading above grade level, making the swim team, winning the school spelling bee, were acknowledged with distracted "that's nice" responses, while his cousins' dance trophies and piano recitals warranted family celebrations. Ryan had long since given up on my family, attending mandatory gatherings with cold politeness, but otherwise keeping his distance. "They're toxic," he told me after one particularly hurtful Thanksgiving where my mother spent the entire meal praising Rebecca's daughters while barely acknowledging Logan. "I stay quiet for your sake, but I hate watching what they do to both of you." Logan, now older and more perceptive, began withdrawing around my family. The eager little boy who once ran to hug his grandparents became quieter, more reserved in their presence. He stopped asking if they would come to his events. When they occasionally remembered to send gifts, his thank you calls became shorter and more formal. "Does Grandma not like me?" he asked once after we left a family dinner where he had been seated at a separate table from his cousins. The question devastated me. "Of course she likes you," I assured him, though the words felt hollow. Some people just don't know how to show love very well. I maintained a superficial relationship with my family, posting occasional updates on social media, attending required gatherings, and making obligatory calls. I told myself I was doing it for Logan, that some family connection was better than none. But in reality, I was still that little girl desperate for her mother's approval, hoping that someday I would be enough, that Logan would be enough. By Logan's 8th birthday, he had stopped expecting his extended family to show up. When I asked if he wanted me to invite them to his science-themed party at the Children's Museum, he shrugged and said, "They won't come anyway." His words hurt because they were true. I invited them regardless, and as expected, all found reasons not to attend. My mother later sent a gift card with a note saying, "Sorry we missed it." Logan understands how busy everyone is with important commitments. But what was more important than celebrating a child? What commitments consistently took priority over showing Logan he mattered? The question haunted me as I watched him develop resilience I admired, but wished he hadn't needed to learn so young. Ryan had been working 60-hour weeks to keep us afloat financially, while still contributing to my family's increasingly extravagant expectations. "We're teaching Logan that it's okay to be used," he said one night. "Is that really what you want him to learn?" I didn't. But breaking free from family patterns is harder than it seems, especially when you've been conditioned your whole life to maintain peace at any cost. I kept hoping for change, even as evidence mounted that it would never come. Logan's 9th birthday approached with a milestone significance. Single digits to double digits next year. I wanted to make it special, to compensate for all the disappointments he'd weathered with such maturity. Ryan and I planned his first big kid party, an adventure day at an outdoor education center with zip lines, rock climbing, and wilderness skills. "Do you think they'll come this time?" Logan asked one evening as we worked on invitations for his school friends. The question caught me off guard. After last year, I thought he'd given up hope. "Do you want me to invite them?" He was quiet for a moment, coloring the edge of an invitation carefully. "Yeah, maybe this time." That flicker of hope in his eyes made me determined to secure my family's attendance. I didn't just send invitations. I called each family member personally, emphasizing how important this birthday was to Logan. I scheduled it 6 weeks in advance to avoid conflicts. I offered to pay for my niece's participation if cost was a concern. We wouldn't miss it, my mother assured me. 9 is a special age. We'll all be there. For the first time in years, I believed her. My father confirmed separately, saying he had marked his calendar. Rebecca promised to bring both girls, who were now old enough to enjoy the activities. Even Ethan and Madison committed, saying it sounded like fun. I threw myself into preparations. Beyond booking the adventure center, I ordered a custom cake featuring Logan's latest passion, astronomy. I created personalized gift bags with space-themed items. I coordinated with other parents about carpooling and waivers. Logan's excitement grew as the day approached. He specifically looked forward to showing his grandfather the rock-climbing wall and teaching his cousins the constellations he had memorized. The morning of his birthday dawned sunny and perfect. Logan woke early, too excited to sleep. "Today's going to be the best day ever," he declared, putting on the new hiking boots we'd given him as an early present. Ryan and I exchanged hopeful glances over Logan's head. Maybe this really would be the day my family finally showed up for him. We arrived at the adventure center early to set up. Logan's friends from school began arriving, parents dropping them off with wrapped presents and good wishes. The instructor gathered the kids for a safety briefing while I kept checking my phone and the parking lot for signs of my family. 30 minutes past the start time, no one had arrived or called. I texted my mother, "Are you on your way? We're starting the first activity soon." No response. An hour in, Logan kept looking toward the entrance during breaks between activities. "Maybe they got lost," he suggested, his voice smaller than it had been that morning. By lunchtime, it was clear no one was coming. My father finally texted, "Something came up. Send pictures." My mother, sister, and brother didn't even bother with that much. Logan put on a brave face for his friends, participating in the activities and smiling for photos. But I caught him looking at the empty chairs we had reserved for family members, his expression flickering between disappointment and resignation. That evening, after his friends had gone home and Logan was looking through his presents in the living room, my phone chimed with a text from my mother, "Emergency family meeting at our house tonight." Rebecca's daughter Sophia was approached by a modeling scout today. "We're discussing summer scheduling for her potential assignments." So exciting. I stared at the phone in disbelief. This was the something that had come up? Another celebration for my niece that the entire family had dropped everything to attend, including Logan's long-planned birthday? Before I could respond, social media notifications began appearing. Rebecca had posted photos from an amusement park, pictures showing my parents, brother, sister-in-law, and both nieces on rides, eating cotton candy and posing with characters. The timestamp showed they had been there during Logan's entire party. They hadn't even bothered with separate excuses this time. They had simply chosen, as a unified group, to take my nieces to an amusement park instead of attending the birthday party they had all promised to attend. I showed the phone to Ryan, who took one look and walked out of the room, too angry to speak. When he returned, his expression was resolute. "Enough," he said quietly so Logan couldn't hear. "This isn't just rude anymore. It's emotional abuse of Logan and of you. They're showing him over and over that he doesn't matter to them." "I know," I whispered, the full weight of 5 years of rejections finally crashing down on me. "You were right all along." Logan came into the kitchen then, holding a space encyclopedia one of his friends had given him. This was still the best birthday, he said, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. The rock wall was really cool. After he went to bed, I sat with Ryan at our kitchen table, scrolling through years of photos, Logan at various ages, waiting for grandparents who never showed, making room for cousins who were given priority over him. His smile becoming more guarded with each passing year. "I've been teaching him that it's okay to be an afterthought," I said, tears finally falling. that it's normal for people to repeatedly hurt you and face no consequences. Ryan took my hand. It's not too late to teach him something different. We talked late into the night about boundaries, respect, and what family should really mean. I realized I'd been holding onto a fantasy, the loving extended family I had always wanted for Logan, but that had never actually existed. I had been willing to accept scraps of attention from my family while they continually showed us where we ranked in their priorities. Dead last. I'm done, I finally said. I won't announce it or make a scene, but I'm done letting them hurt him. For 4 days after Logan's birthday, I didn't call or text anyone in my family. No one reached out to me either, not to apologize, not to ask how the party went, not to offer belated birthday wishes to Logan. Their silence confirmed everything I needed to know about their priorities. Then on the 4th day, my mother's text arrived, $2,700 due for the luxury cabin weekend in July. Everyone's chipping in equally. Need payment within 48 hours to secure booking. No greeting. No acknowledgement of the missed birthday. Just a demand for money that represented nearly a month's worth of our mortgage payments. Something inside me shifted in that moment. The hurt crystallized into clarity, and for the first time, I saw my family's behavior for what it truly was, exploitation wrapped in the guise of family obligation. The same people who couldn't spare 3 hours for Logan's birthday expected us to spend thousands on a vacation where he would inevitably be sidelined again. I showed the text to Ryan. I think it's time we stopped funding our own exclusion, I said. His smile was grim but supportive. What's the plan? The $2,700 demand wasn't just about money. It represented years of uneven expectations and one-sided relationships. Looking at the breakdown my mother had attached, I saw the extravagance that had become standard. A 7-bedroom luxury wilderness retreat with private hot tubs, gourmet kitchen, home theater, and daily housekeeping service. The per-family cost included champagne welcome baskets, pre-stocked groceries from an organic delivery service, and a private chef for 2 dinners. What struck me most was how the text assumed our participation without actually inviting us. There was no "we'd love for you to join us" or "hope you can make it," just a payment demand as if we had no choice in the matter. After years of being treated as unwanted extras at family gatherings, we were still expected to fund them without complaint. I sat with Ryan at our kitchen table, laptop open between us, taking inventory of our financial entanglements with my family. The list was longer than I had realized. First, there was the family emergency credit card, an account my mother had insisted everyone maintain for unexpected family needs. In practice, it had become a slush fund for my mother's spontaneous purchases that she deemed necessary for family image. Recent charges included matching outfits for family photos that Logan was rarely centered in, and restaurant bills for celebrations we were invited to at the last minute. Then there was the shared vacation fund account where we dutifully deposited money throughout the year for trips where Logan was consistently marginalized. My parents had administrative access to withdraw funds for deposits and payments. I discovered several subscription services, streaming platforms, warehouse club memberships, and digital storage accounts that I paid for but my entire family used. My sister regularly ordered groceries through my warehouse club account, and my brother's family binge-watched shows on my premium streaming service. Most surprising was finding that my parents had listed me as the account holder for their cell phone family plan years ago when they needed someone with better credit to open the account. I had been paying the base fee while they reimbursed me for their lines, sometimes late, sometimes forgetting altogether. They financially enmeshed us to control us, Ryan said, looking at the list. Classic manipulation tactic. I nodded slowly, the realization settling like a weight. And we've allowed it because I was desperate for them to accept us, to accept Logan. With methodical precision, we began researching how to disentangle ourselves. I called credit card customer service to understand my options for restricting authorized users. I studied the terms of the shared accounts to learn how withdrawals could be blocked. I documented patterns of charges to establish that certain expenses had not been authorized by me despite being in my name. "We need to be careful," Ryan cautioned. "Your mother is the type to claim fraud if she doesn't get her way." He was right. My mother had once threatened a restaurant with legal action when they couldn't accommodate her last-minute party reservation. She had berated retail employees who wouldn't bend store policies for her. She viewed rules as suggestions that didn't apply to her, especially if she could intimidate someone into making an exception. I created a folder on my computer with screenshots of years of one-sided financial expectations, text messages showing broken promises to Logan, and social media evidence of family events we'd been excluded from while still expected to help fund family celebrations. If my mother tried to claim I had acted improperly, I wanted evidence of the context. Next, I opened new accounts in just my name, with passwords my family couldn't guess. I researched how to properly document the closure of shared accounts to protect myself. I took notes on every conversation with customer service representatives, recording names, employee IDs, and summaries of their guidance. "What about your dad?" Ryan asked as we worked. "He's been more decent than the others." It was true. My father had occasionally shown genuine interest in Logan, though he always deferred to my mother's plans and priorities. He had sent thoughtful gifts even when he didn't attend birthdays. Once or twice, he had called just to talk to Logan about science projects or baseball stats. I'll deal with him separately, I decided. But right now, I need to focus on protecting Logan from all of them. The most difficult question was whether to warn my family about what I was planning. Part of me wanted to call them out, to explain how years of neglect and rejection had led to this moment. But another part, the part that had watched Logan's hope fade year after year, knew they would only manipulate the situation, make excuses, and ultimately change nothing. "They've had 5 years of birthdays to show they care," Ryan said quietly. "They don't deserve a warning now." I nodded, resolve strengthening. This wasn't about revenge. It was about consequences. It was about teaching Logan that he deserved respect and that it was okay to walk away from people who repeatedly hurt you, even family. That night, I wrote out my plan step by step, determining the exact order to close accounts, transfer funds, and revoke access. I rehearsed responses to the angry calls I knew would come. Most importantly, I thought about what to tell Logan, how to explain our distance from his extended family without burdening him with adult conflicts. "We'll focus on the people who show up," I told Ryan as we finally went to bed. "The ones who actually love him." The next morning, I looked at my mother's text again. $2,700 due for the luxury cabin weekend in July. Everyone's chipping in equally. Need payment within 48 hours to secure booking. My fingers hovered over the phone. 5 years of missed birthdays. 5 years of Logan learning he wasn't a priority. 5 years of funding my own family's rejection of my son. I took a deep breath and typed my response. I sent exactly $1 via the payment app my mother had requested, adding a simple note. Wrong guest list. Then I turned off notifications and began methodically implementing my plan. First, I called the credit card company for the family emergency card. I explained that I needed to remove all authorized users immediately and freeze any new charges. The representative was helpful, especially when I mentioned concerns about unauthorized use. Within minutes, the card was secured. Any attempts to use it by my family members would be declined. Next, I logged into the shared vacation fund account. As a joint account holder, I had every legal right to withdraw funds. I transferred our portion, money we had contributed over months of careful budgeting, back to our private account, leaving my family's contributions untouched. Then I removed myself from the account entirely, documenting every step with screenshots. One by one, I reclaimed financial control. I changed passwords on all streaming services and digital subscriptions, removing saved payment methods family members had been using. I contacted the warehouse club to revoke extended family member access. I called the cell phone company to separate my line from the family plan, establishing my own account while ensuring I wasn't impacting my parents' service, just their ability to control the account. For each action, I kept meticulous records, dates, times, representative names, confirmation numbers, and account statements showing our contributions versus usage patterns. If questions arose later, I would have evidence that I had acted reasonably and within my rights. By evening, my phone was buzzing constantly with notifications. I had silenced individual conversations, but could see the preview messages piling up. Payment declined. What's going on? Why can't I access Netflix? The card isn't working. Fix it immediately. Call me now. I didn't respond to any of them. This silence was intentional. After years of being ignored, I wanted them to experience what it felt like to have urgent messages go unanswered. The next morning, my mother escalated to calling. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to her increasingly angry messages. Amber, the card is showing declined. This is an emergency. Call me back immediately. I don't know what game you're playing, but the vacation deposit is due today. Transfer the money now. Your father is very disappointed in your childish behavior. This affects the entire family. By afternoon, my sister and brother had joined the pressure campaign. Mom is absolutely livid. Whatever point you're trying to make, it's not worth the drama. You're ruining the vacation plans for everyone. Just pay your share like always. Not one message mentioned Logan's birthday. Not one acknowledged the years of exclusion and broken promises. They were concerned only with their immediate inconvenience, a perfect illustration of exactly why I was making this break. On the third day, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. When I answered, a professional voice identified herself as a representative from the bank. Mrs. Mitchell? This is Sandra from First National Bank's Fraud Department. We've received a report of unauthorized account changes and transfers from a shared vacation fund. The other account holders are claiming you've acted without proper authorization. I'm calling to verify these transactions. I had anticipated this exact scenario. I understand your concerns, I replied calmly. I'd be happy to clarify the situation. I'm an authorized account holder who withdrew only my own contributions. I have documentation of all deposits made from my personal account versus withdrawals, as well as confirmation from your customer service department that my actions were within account holder rights. I see, Sandra said, her tone shifting slightly. And the credit card restrictions? I'm the primary account holder on that card. I have records of increasing unauthorized use by supplemental card holders for non-emergency purchases. I acted to protect my credit and financial standing, which is my right as the primary account holder. There was a pause as she reviewed her notes. You're correct about your rights in these accounts, Mrs. Mitchell. However, your family members are quite insistent that this is a misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding, I said firmly. It's a long overdue boundary. I'm happy to provide documentation of my contributions to these accounts versus benefits received if needed. After confirming a few more details, Sandra concluded that no fraud had occurred, just a family dispute where I had acted within my legal rights. She advised me to resolve the personal aspects directly with my family, but confirmed that from the bank's perspective, the matter was closed. Minutes after hanging up, my mother called again. This time, I answered. How dare you, she began without preamble. The bank called us about your ridiculous fraud claim. I didn't file a fraud claim, I corrected her. You did. The bank determined I acted within my rights. This is absolutely unacceptable. We have deadlines for the cabin deposit. Your father had to cover your portion to avoid losing the reservation. You've embarrassed us with the bank and ruined vacation planning for the entire family. I took a deep breath. Did you know last Saturday was Logan's 9th birthday? The abrupt change of subject seemed to throw her. What does that have to do with anything? It was his birthday, the one you and everyone else promised to attend. Instead, you all went to the amusement park with Rebecca's kids. You didn't even call him. We were busy, she dismissed. Children have birthdays every year. This vacation has been planned for months. Logan has had 9 birthdays. You've missed the last 5. Every single one. And after each one, you've still expected us to fund family events where he's treated as an afterthought. You're being ridiculous and oversensitive. Logan is fine. Now, about the money. No, I interrupted. There will be no more money. No more funding family events where my son isn't valued. No more pretending we're included when we're clearly not. This is about money? Fine. We'll get Logan an extra gift or something. Now transfer the $2,700 immediately. Everyone is waiting. Her response confirmed everything. She still didn't get it. Or worse, didn't care. This wasn't about money. It was about 5 years of showing Logan he wasn't important enough to show up for. The cabin booking shouldn't be a problem, I said evenly. Just divide the cost among the people who actually matter to you. We won't be there. I ended the call as she was still protesting and blocked her number. Within minutes, my siblings began their assault. Rebecca called, leaving a voicemail accusing me of ruining everything as usual and punishing the whole family because Logan didn't get enough attention on his birthday. Ethan texted that I was being incredibly selfish and needed to grow up and honor family obligations. The most surprising call came from my father later that evening. Unlike the others, his voice was subdued. Your mother is beside herself, he began. I'm sure she is, I replied. Nobody likes consequences. He sighed heavily. Amber, whatever point you're trying to make, it's not a point, Dad. It's a boundary. For 5 years, Logan has watched his family skip his birthday while attending every event for his cousins. He's learned that he's not important enough to show up for, but his parents are still expected to fund family gatherings where he's ignored. I'm not teaching him that anymore. There was a long pause. I did send him a gift, he said finally, his voice smaller. A gift isn't the same as showing up. My voice caught unexpectedly. He waited for you. Every year he waited. Do you know what it's like to watch your child's hope die? I'm sorry, he said, and he sounded like he might actually mean it. Your mother always plans these things, and I just go along. That's the problem, Dad. Everyone just goes along and Logan pays the price. Another heavy silence fell between us. What can I do? He finally asked. Start by understanding that this isn't about the money. It's about respect and consequences. Logan deserves better than what this family has given him. After we hung up, Ryan found me sitting at the kitchen table, staring at my phone. You okay? He asked, putting a hand on my shoulder. I think so, I said, surprisingly steady. It actually feels liberating. That night, we sat down with Logan and carefully explained that we would be spending less time with my side of the family for a while. We emphasized that it was an adult decision that had nothing to do with him. Sometimes, I told him, we need to spend our time with people who make us feel valued and loved. The people who show up when it matters. Logan nodded thoughtfully. Like my friends who came to my birthday? Exactly like that, Ryan affirmed. Does this mean we won't go to the cabin? Logan asked, and I held my breath, worried he would be disappointed. We won't go to that cabin, I confirmed. But we're planning our own special family trip instead. Just the 3 of us. Doing things we all enjoy. To my surprise, Logan smiled. A real, unburdened smile I hadn't seen in too long. Good, he said simply. Those trips weren't very fun anyway. Nobody ever wanted to do what I wanted to do. Out of the mouths of babes. He had seen the truth all along. The weeks following my financial separation from my family were challenging but clarifying. My mother attempted to use extended family members as flying monkeys. Having my aunt and a cousin call to tell me how heartbroken everyone was by my sudden hostility. These relatives, who had themselves never shown much interest in Logan, now lectured me about family loyalty and obligation. I responded to each with the same calm statement. This is between me and my immediate family, based on patterns established over years. I appreciate your concern, but this is not open for discussion or negotiation. Logan, meanwhile, seemed to blossom in the absence of family pressure. Without the constant subtle comparisons to his cousins or dismissal of his interests, he grew more confident. He talked more at dinner, sharing stories from school with animated expressions I hadn't seen in too long. He invited friends over without the anxiety he used to show before family visits. Have you noticed how much more relaxed he is? Ryan observed one evening after Logan had gone to bed. We were sitting on our small back porch, enjoying the spring evening. It's like he's not walking on eggshells anymore. He was right. By removing the people who consistently devalued him, we had created space for Logan to just be himself, a bright, curious, kind 9-year-old who no longer had to work for approval that never came. Ryan had been my rock through the entire process. His unwavering support validated that I wasn't overreacting or being too sensitive, accusations my family had used to dismiss my concerns for years. Our marriage, always strong, grew even stronger as we united to protect our son and each other. You know what's ironic? I said, taking his hand. For years, I stayed connected to my family because I thought Logan needed extended family to be well-adjusted. But they were the ones making him feel inadequate. 3 weeks after I sent the $1 payment, my sister Rebecca attempted a different approach. She called during my lunch break at work, her voice uncharacteristically conciliatory. Look, I know you're upset about the birthday thing, she began, but this has gone on long enough. Mom and Dad's anniversary dinner is next month, and they expect everyone to be there. It's their 40th. We can't have family drama ruining it. I noted how she framed it, not as an invitation, but as an expectation. Some patterns never change. I'm sure it will be a lovely celebration, I replied, but we won't be attending. Are you serious? Her conciliatory tone vanished. It's their 40th anniversary. How can you be so selfish? It's interesting that missing their anniversary dinner is selfish. But missing Logan's birthday 5 years in a row was just being busy, I observed. Those double standards are exactly why we're taking a step back from family gatherings. This isn't just about you, Amber. Think about Logan. Don't you want him to have grandparents in his life? I wanted that for 9 years, I replied calmly. I wanted it while you all were showing him that his cousins' dance recitals and soccer games were more important than his birthdays. Actions have consequences, Rebecca. This is the consequence of consistently showing Logan he doesn't matter. After more attempts at guilt and manipulation failed, she resorted to threats. Mom is considering removing you from the will if you keep this up. The family vacation property was supposed to be shared among all of us, but she's talking about excluding you entirely. The old me would have panicked at this threat. The new me, the mother who had watched her son's spirit dim under years of conditional acceptance, found it almost amusing. That's her choice to make, I said. Just like it's my choice to prioritize people who value my son. My father was the only one who made a genuine attempt at reconciliation. He called one evening, asking if he could meet Logan and me at the park near our house. Just the 3 of us, he specified. No pressure, no agenda. I just want to see my grandson. I consulted with Ryan, who was cautiously supportive. Your dad's always been the least problematic. Maybe he's genuinely reflecting. At the park, my father seemed older somehow. Less certain of himself. He had brought Logan a telescope, a thoughtful gift aligned with my son's interest in astronomy. I'm sorry I missed your birthday, he told Logan directly. That was wrong of me, and it won't happen again. Logan regarded him cautiously, the wariness in his young eyes breaking my heart. He had learned not to trust promises from his grandparents. It's okay, he said automatically, the response of a child who had grown accustomed to disappointment. It's not okay, my father insisted gently. And you don't have to pretend it is. I should have been there. I made a bad choice. Something in his sincere acknowledgement seemed to reach Logan. They spent an hour looking at the telescope together, my father listening attentively as Logan explained constellations and planets. When Logan went to try out the swings, my father turned to me. "I've been a coward," he admitted, "going along with your mother's priorities even when I knew they were wrong. Watching Rebecca's kids be favored. Saying nothing when Logan was sidelined. It was easier to keep the peace than to do what was right." "Why now?" I asked, genuinely curious about his change of heart. "Because I realized I'm losing my grandson. And my daughter." His eyes were damp. "And unlike your mother and siblings, I know it's my own fault." We established careful boundaries after that day. My father could see Logan for one-on-one activities, but there would be no pressure to rejoin larger family gatherings where the same dynamics would play out. He accepted these terms with humility I'd never seen in him before. My mother and siblings remained entrenched in their position that I was overreacting and creating unnecessary drama. When the anniversary dinner came and went without us, my mother sent a pointed email about how everyone who truly cares about family had attended, with attached photos showing a deliberately empty chair where I should have been. The manipulation was so transparent it no longer had power over me. For Logan's 10th birthday, we planned a celebration with people who had consistently shown him love and attention. His school friends, our neighbors, Ryan's parents who always remembered his interests and achievements, and a few of my close friends who had become honorary aunts and uncles to him. My father asked if he could attend, promising to come alone. "What do you think?" I asked Logan, making it clear the choice was his. He considered it seriously. "I think Grandpa is trying," he said finally. "And he really liked my science project last month." The birthday party was smaller than the family gatherings of my childhood, but infinitely more genuine. Logan was surrounded by people who knew him, valued him, and had shown up for him consistently. He didn't have to perform or compete for attention. He could simply enjoy being celebrated. My father arrived with a handwritten card and a donation to the local observatory in Logan's name, a thoughtful gift that acknowledged his passions. He sat somewhat awkwardly among people he didn't know, but made a genuine effort to engage and observe how others interacted with Logan. "I see it now," he told me quietly as we watched Logan laughing with his friends. "What's been missing all these years? He's happy here because these people actually see him." That night, after everyone had gone and Logan was asleep surrounded by his presence, Ryan and I talked about the journey of the past months. I never expected the financial separation to bring so much peace. I admitted, it wasn't about the money at all. "It was about respect," Ryan said, "and teaching Logan that he deserves it." Our finances had actually improved since cutting ties with my family's expensive expectations. Without the pressure to fund elaborate vacations and events where we were afterthoughts, we discovered we had more resources than we realized. We had started a proper college fund for Logan and were planning a family trip to the national parks he'd been wanting to explore. More importantly, we had shown Logan what healthy boundaries look like. That love isn't proven through expensive gifts or social media posts, but through consistent presence and genuine interest. That it's okay to walk away from relationships that consistently hurt you, even when those relationships are with family. That his worth isn't determined by people who can't see his value. One evening, Logan asked me a question that showed just how much he had absorbed from our experience. "Mom, is Grandma ever going to say sorry for missing my birthdays?" I considered how to answer honestly without burdening him with adult complexities. "Some people find it very hard to admit when they're wrong, honey, even when they are." He nodded thoughtfully. "That's sad for them, isn't it? Because then they can't fix their mistakes." Out of the mouth of babes indeed. Yes, I agreed. It is sad for them. But it doesn't have to be sad for us. We can learn from their mistakes instead of repeating them. If you've ever had to make the difficult choice to protect your child from toxic family dynamics, you know it isn't about revenge. It's about breaking destructive patterns. It's about teaching our children that love should lift them up, not diminish them. That they deserve to be prioritized. Not just when it's convenient, but consistently. Have you ever had to create boundaries with family to protect your children or yourself? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to prioritize their child's emotional well-being over family expectations. Thank you for listening to our journey, and remember, sometimes the family we choose is more nurturing than the family we're born into.